Hey, legends, welcome to another episode of Chat with Matt, where I talk to all sorts of people from the obstacle racing industry. And tonight is a name that you definitely recognize, or a face you would recognize. You would have seen Richard as the man on the microphone at Spartan Race Australia events. But not only is Rich the MC, he's also the Hurricane Heat coordinator and the fitness industry consultant. Richard has been running events for 8 years in Australia, including 4 years with the elites, and he represented Australia in the obstacle course racing world championships in 2015. Now, Rick owns his own obstacle and stunt gym and has been a professional stunt actor for 12 years. You might have seen in the picture that I used to promote this talk of a picture of him running while on fire. So I definitely want to talk to him about that. And recently he's been busy starting Risky Kids, which is now across 15 locations in VIC and New South Wales, and we'll definitely be talking about that too. But here he is. I'm going to bring him on screen. Rich, how are you, man?
I'm well, thank you. Matt, how are you?
So good. So good. It's Thursday. Thank you for rescheduling, man. I picked up a little injury last week and ended up cancelling last minute. So sorry for the mess around there.
How's your shoulder, mate? You're carrying the weight of the world. That's the problem.
Too much, man. Doing too much. I've torn a trap.
Yeah,
which has given me a little bit of grief. But I had I just had like a massive hematoma, massive bleed. Like I ended up getting painkillers on the I did it the Thursday afternoon. Friday night it was bad, and I went to like emergency about 10 o'clock and ended up getting painkillers. But by that point it was so swollen it felt like a broken collarbone. It was pretty hectic. But then it sort of drained out as fast as it came on. We've got a few comments.
I'm getting compliments on the beard.
Can you see those, Rich? Yeah.
Yes, I can. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody.
So, guys,
hello to the people watching.
Hello to the people watching. Hello to the people at home. So, you can comment, and we can bring your comments on screen. Now, there is a link in the description to this video that I'll need you guys to click on so that I can bring your pretty pictures on screen, like Tammy Cox here. But if you haven't logged into that link, then I just get Facebook user, which is a blank face. Somebody who you or the Krypteia at Bryce is letting us know they're here. We've got a couple more people. So Tammy's here, Funda's here, Donna, Alana, Gossie's loving the beard, Richard. And we've got another Facebook user.
So they should. Well. I'm enjoying it. It's
nearly
long enough. Oh, I'm attempting to grow it back to the length at which it blows in the wind. It's only ever been that length once, so I'm working my way back to it. Hello, Scott, the infamous photographer. We've got Scott Shepherd. Hello, sir. It's lovely to have you there again, mate.
Can you take some screen grabs for us, Scotty, while you're watching?
With your camera, though.
Just like cool. When was your beard last long enough to blow in the breeze?
I recall it fondly. It was actually bright 2 years ago. I remember standing on top of the mountain and I could feel it being tugged by the wind. And I thought, this is a good length. But unfortunately, with the stunt work, literally the reason that I grow my beard is in case they need a person with a beard. Because yes, they can stick one on, but they are so freaking uncomfortable. So I just prefer this, and that way they can take it off. They can give me whatever.
Sure, perfect. Scotty's gonna grab some photos for us. You're a good man, Scott. That's why we love you.
One of the reasons that I love Scott Shepherd as a photographer is not because of the quality of his photos, but because of the quality of himself. His passion is what gets him good photos, not his skill and not his technology. And it's what I've always said about him. He's just in it. It's
definitely.
The ancient swordsman Musashi would talk about like being in a state of flow for anyone who's read his book. And it's like being so completely in the moment that nothing interferes with your thinking, whether it's the past, whether it's the future, nothing but the moment. And that's like how I envisage Scott Shepherd takes photos. Am I right, Scott?
I like that. Who's the book that you just mentioned? That's I can never say the guy's name. It's like Ching Sing Mi Hai or something. The guy.
No, Musashi Miyamoto.
Miyamoto. There's a guy, like a recent guy, who like did a heap of work on the flow state and wrote a book about it.
Yeah, it's all been written before.
But yeah, he definitely gets some amazing, shots of emotion. I'm taken back to pictures of people who were tapping out of ultras, and just some amazing photos that couldn't have been taken if you didn't have an actual connection with the races, right? So that's a good thing.
Let's just talk about Scott Shepherd for the next 50 minutes. That'd be a good podcast, I think.
Yeah, I can probably do a three-way. I think I can bring another guest on. We've got a couple more people jumping on. Luke Godley's here. Tracy's here as well. One of your staff, I believe.
Oh, hey, Trace. What's up, buddy?
Oh, hey. Funzy's just posted.
Trace is my gym manager. Trace runs the show.
Fuck yeah. Funzy's just posted a link that you guys can click on to log in. Otherwise, I can't see you guys, like the last 4 people that have posted. We can't see who you are. Somebody's live from Hawaii. Mahalo.
We can narrow them down. We'll figure it out. How many people can live in Hawaii?
Probably a few. It's a big island.
What's up, Chris? How you doing, buddy?
Robbie Cardillo's here as well.
What's up, Rob?
And Scotty just said if you're thinking you're not in the zone, you'll be too slow.
See, he gets it. He knows what we're talking about.
Live in the moment. And Chris, he's a repeat offender for the Hurricane Heats. I'm sure you've put him through some torment, Rich. Fucking powerhouse.
So how do we break the ice? Do you have like specific icebreaker questions, something to do with favorite foods or stuff like that?
I was just going to talk about your beard, but we covered it. That was my.
It was covered. You got beaten to the punch.
Yeah, but that's okay. You were gracious enough to give me some topics yourself that we were to that you thought would be interesting for the people watching to talk about, and you being one of the OGs in Spartan Race in Australia. If you've been running for 8 years, that puts it back to 2012, which I think is the first year it started. Man, one of the things that you said you wanted to chat about was the history of Spartan in Australia. So, let's get into that if you want. How did you get into obstacle racing?
Well, I actually initially my very first obstacle race completely turned me off obstacle racing. Funnily enough, I did a Tough Mudder, but Tough Mudder was, back in the day, it was simply the 21-kilometer option. So it was like that or nothing. Yeah. And the other issue with it was that it was not a well-run event in terms of the lines. And I was actually in one of the earlier waves as well. Plus, I was not an endurance runner. So part of my lack of enjoyment there was the fact that I came away from it having waited in lines, having only been able to, complete about 15 obstacles because that's all there was. And some of them were a little bit gimmicky, and my ankles really hurt because it was like one of the first ones back at Phillip Island in this cow paddock, and it was just literally like cow rutted ground. Anyway, so that was before all of my obstacle race Spartan mentality training had kicked in and allowed me to become the person I am today. But I have literally been on a 21K run today. So it's, the things we learn. But I basically said, nah, obstacle racing is not for me, because I'm like, I love the obstacles, but the running, can shove it. And then about a year later, someone dragged me along to the Spartan Sprint. So that was the first Spartan Sprint held in Melbourne. And they had to convince me. They were the ones who took me to the Tough Mudder, and they're like, no, you'll love this. This is completely different. I'm like, yeah, sure it is. And they're like, no, it's like, it's shorter and there's more obstacles and it's more hardcore. And I'm like, okay. So I went and I did that, and I basically didn't miss a Spartan since that moment. So I basically, I missed out on the very first one they held in Picton, which, I'm sad about that. But then everything after that I hit, and I just started following it around. I think I've missed one event since that day, and that was actually because of a friend's wedding. I had to. I was like, you can't just do obstacle races. You have to have friends. Yeah. So if Teagues, if you and Kel ever watch this. That was actually a hard decision for me because A, I'm a workaholic, and two, I'm a Spartan maniac. So I had to think life, Spartan. It was, but yeah. So that's how I got started, and that's, everything else is history, I guess. Do you want to know the rest of the history?
I'm keen to listen to whatever you want to say, man.
Oh, well, your question was very specific. You said, "How did I get started?" You need to cut me off because I will just talk and talk and talk, and that's not how conversations
you said
work.
you're in
Conversations
lockdown
are two-way.
These people hear me talk enough. I'm fine to just listen to you talk. You also said you're in lockdown and you literally have nothing to do after. So we're like, we're not on a time limit, man. If you want to chat,
This can go on for a long time. Yes,
we can go off on tangents.
Well, let's ask the people. Does a single person want to hear about what I did after I started Spartan?
I might just peruse through the comments while we're waiting for a response to come in. Tracy's laughing. Scott's saying, we want to hear Richard's wisdom. Are you coming up for GC? Robbie Cadillo's also asked who's running the 12-hour hurricane at GC. Can we weigh in on that? Some great questions. Will you be running the 12-hour hurricane heat at GC?
Well, do we want to dig into that now in terms of yes, we want to hear your story. Okay, that's two. All right. Before we get into the hurricane heats, because that's a topic that I said we should actually talk about. So that was that's one thing that I thought everybody might want to understand. Their favorite obstacle race, understanding exactly what are the cogs that make it all turn. But basically, once I got involved in Spartan Race, it was very attractive to me for the same reasons that I think it's attractive to a lot of people. It's a very culture and community-driven community and event series. It's. I always say, Tough Mudder, I don't like to rag on Tough Mudder, but I will, just in terms of their business model. Tough Mudder is, it's just the race, whereas, or like you go and you do a Tough Mudder, but you are a Spartan. I know some people will argue with that and they'll be like, no, you are a Mudder. And I'm like, no, that was just them trying to get on that bandwagon with Spartan because they realized how powerful that mentality it was. And it was about, number one, smart branding, 7 kilometers, then 12 kilometers, then 21 kilometers, which is now 5, 10, 20. Anyway, so I was attracted to it for the fact that it seems to speak to me, especially as a fitness professional, about trying to change people and give them opportunities for real and meaningful stuff. Like, you see people make fun of stuff like functional training, and it's like, well, what are you functional training for? Like, for your 9 to 5 office job, and then your weekend with your mates fishing.
Just always fucking ready.
Yeah, but it's one of those things as well. It's about, okay, that's kind of a good point. What are you training for?
Yeah.
And I always talk to, when as part of my fitness consultancy role, I was always like, we need to be talking to the CrossFit community because not everybody wants to do CrossFit events. Not everybody wants to do, the tournaments and the CrossFit comps. But they're these immensely fit, well-trained, functional people. You got to get out in the world and you got to test yourself. And there's so many other benefits to it. And this is, a big part of what I've done with Spartan in the last couple of years is working with fitness professionals to understand that what we do at Spartan is beyond just the go have fun. And it is fun. It is the ability to really have an impact on communities and mindsets. It's an opportunity for people to go out and actually test themselves and challenge themselves. And when we start to look at the structure of Spartan, like the shorter distance, the 5 kilometer and the 10 kilometer and the 21 kilometer, and then you've got the hurricane heats and everything like that, it's also created in such a way that people can go in and they can choose to challenge themselves the right amount. So this is something I know a lot of people are like, oh, they were really mad when the 7Ks and the 14Ks got reduced in terms of the distances. Now, number one, it made a lot of sense because literally every other event in the world has like 5K, 10K, 21K. Yeah. But more importantly, what it means is that not everybody is geared up for going out and challenging themselves. It's too egocentric to think, okay, well, if they go out and they do a 7 kilometer, then they'll believe in themselves more. It's not how it works. You're just as likely for someone to go out and do a 7 kilometer event, and that is what turns them off obstacle racing for the rest of their life. If we go back to that story from before of myself, I did a 21 kilometer obstacle race. I wasn't ready for that physically in terms of the running, and it meant that I didn't enjoy myself and I didn't see myself as a runner.
Yeah.
The second I did a 7 kilometer event, I was like, cool, I can do this. It let me think, okay, I can do a 7K. Okay, if I can do a 7K, I could probably see my way to a 14K.
Yeah.
All right, if I'm doing a 14K, then I could probably do the 21K. Yeah. And it's just the way that human beings work, that you have to work within it. And like, you're a trainer, so you understand the concept of mastery, right? You don't just get someone in and say, all right, cool, do a 200 kilo deadlift.
Yep.
So it doesn't work that way. You've got to chop it into tiny little chunks. And you say, all right, our first goal is we're going to get you to a 25 kilo deadlift, and then a 50 kilo deadlift, and then a 75 kilo deadlift. And those steps along the way are what will get people to believe in it. Yeah, and it's to me, it's why it's so important. Yep. I forgot the question.
I think we were just talking about why Spartan's good. But yes. I couldn't agree more. You know, the way that Spartan is structured, that you can always level up, and it doesn't really matter where you come in. There's a spot that's right for you, and it's true. You know, when you climb the mountain, you're able to see further. So often, if I have, you know, and it didn't take me long when I started in fitness to make OCR the thing that I only did for the reasons you talk about. And when I first start working with somebody, you know, the idea of a 5K sprint is intimidating, but once you get them to do that first event, then you start to go, well, you did that, so how about we start training for the 10K? And they're like, yeah, you know, I can do that. But had you tried to point them at the 10K originally, it was too far. Like, and you know, you'd be familiar with the idea of a stretch goal. When you set goals, they need to be just outside what you're capable of doing. And if at any point it becomes too far out of reach, you lose all motivation to pursue it. I think Spartan do an amazing job of that.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, not only is it a smart business model because you get this tiny little puzzle piece and then you're like, well, shit, now I need the other 2 pieces.
Pretty good marketing.
God damn. Yeah. But it also means that they create this amazing funnel for people to go into. Yeah. And absolutely. And you're not just wrong. It's not just that people won't be able to see themselves doing it, but if they go out and they actually try and they experience the level of discomfort and failure that would be associated with their level of fitness and capability, then yeah, they'll be discouraged, and rightly so. It's because you're not supposed to just go out and, you know, you can set yourself enormous ambitious goals, but at some point, you know, when it comes to goal setting, they have to be realistic. You know, I'm terrible at skiing. This is the example I always give. I always say, if I wanted to be better at skiing, I could be better at skiing, but I'm not going to start with a double black diamond downhill cross country something or other. Don't even know.
Because you'll die. Yeah, you got to ease yourself in, and like as you said at the start, man, you did a 21K first, and you were turned off. But when you found the level that was right for you, it was the thing that you went, "Fuck, this is awesome."
Yes.
And
thank you for clearing up whether I can swear in this. I love swearing.
Of course. Matty Probes has just said, when Richard Williams speaks, it makes me want to run through a brick wall. Can he give us a who am I sometime?
I would hope that he's with immense motivation. I'm hoping that it means that it's making him feel invincible, and not that he's trying to get out of the room.
He's trying to knock himself out. No, it's definitely motivation. So he's asked you to do just a random who am I, and I want you to just be real fucking Tourettesy with it, like just in the middle of the talk, just yell it out at some point with no warning.
Interesting. Okay, I can do that. Hey, look, it's Caitlin Suppressi. Caitlin Suppressi has got 3 of the. Oh wait, I should ask, Caitlin. I won't say any names, but can I talk about your boys? Just give me a thumbs up at some point, and then I'll segue back into that. There's a good reason to talk about Caitlin. She's been doing Spartans with us a little while now, but she's so awesome, so great. Yes, fantastic.
I can't say I've seen Caitlin.
That's surprising.
Does she like this is with the gym?
Yeah. She's she's there. She's got a whole family doing the whole whole shebang. And she's tough. She's cool.
Awesome.
Way cooler than me.
Speaking of your voice, and
she said, of course.
She's given us the thumbs up. Let's go.
Yes, she's got 3 of the most awesome boys who just they come in every week to Risky Kids back when we were open, but they're also doing like they're catching up with us on the weekends, and they just smash everything that gets thrown at them, and like they've overcome some really cool stuff. Like, and this is another thing about Spartan Kids, right? I remember. I remember the 3 boys being at the Latrobe event, and I remember her middle child was, he was understandably nervous and a little bit upset about the whole thing, and he went in there and he didn't want to do it. Well, I don't know whether he didn't want to do it, but he was upset about the fact that he was there. So many new people, such a new experience, and just by overcoming that, it has such an effect on people, even if we say kids. But another example, her youngest was crazy. He's an absolute maniac, but he was much younger. He was like 5, and his older brothers were both like coming into the older group for Risky Kids, and the younger brother was like, no, I'm not going to do it if I can't do it with them. So I said to him, I'm like, if you do it, you have to keep up. I'm not going to give you any breaks just because you're 3 years too young for this program. And he was like, I could do it. And to his credit, despite the fact that he's like a foot shorter than everybody else, has smashed it every time. So Caitlin Suppressi is like pure Spartan, and her family's pure Spartan. So, and that's one of the other great things about Spartan, right? You meet so many people, and you give them opportunities to go out and become the people that they have within them. And it's like, if you didn't have the opportunity to do that, if you didn't know that you could be a hardcore Spartan like Caitlin, then you'd never know, right?
You don't know what you're capable of until you test yourself, right?
Correct. And that's why we must test ourselves, Matt. We must.
Growth is good. You just throwing back to your.
Let me ask you a question. No, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to ask you a question, sir. When it comes to training, because you're a trainer and you train lots of people, right? What do you talk to people about as the purpose for training? This is I love finding this out about trainers. It's one of the reasons I wanted to become the fitness consultant for Spartan, because so I could talk to heaps of trainers, especially trainers who are like this. So, like, what is your purpose for them? Like, I know people might come to you and they might be like, oh, I want this or I want that. But like, if you had a defining purpose, because you got to love what you do, man. So what's your defining purpose?
I think
through fitness.
Yeah. Getting people to be their best selves ultimately. But when I first started in fitness, it was the muscles and the fat loss and the fitness gains. And it all was a little bit shallow. Like, yeah, you're changing lives, but really you're not chipping away at the shit that's really holding people back, which is the mindset stuff. I think the first time, I got onto an obstacle course and it just humbled the fuck out of me. That was amazing. But the first time I ran with clients on an obstacle course and like took clients over A-frames where they were crying, and you literally see growth. It's like when somebody who's been shit scared of public speaking for their whole life finally overcomes it and does it, and then goes, you know what, that wasn't that bad. And then 6 months later, they're a fucking amazing speaker. I think anytime you look into that fear and anytime you tip into it, there's a chance for a lot of growth. I think what I stand for as a trainer is getting people to really lean into that discomfort. And just try to be better than they were yesterday. But I think as I go longer and longer, it's becoming a lot more holistic. Now it's becoming about the sleep and the stress and, not just the physical.
Yeah. And that's, I think, such a big part of, and I see lots of trainers make that transition, especially when they get into obstacle racing. It's like, the word is holistic. I actually like to rally against that. So I don't like the term, because it's kind of like saying you've got a car when it doesn't have an engine. So you put an engine in it and you say, well, it's a holistic car. No, it's just a fucking car. And so when it comes to health and well-being and fitness, it's like, if you're not covering on the emotional stuff, if you're not covering on the challenge side of things, if you're not covering on like food, like psychology, social health, if you're not covering all of those things, then it's not health. It's missing something. It's just weight loss, or it's just aesthetics, whatever it is. And it's funny, like one of my favorite quotes, and I had to like pull it up. You saw me pull it up on the screen though, but this was on our shirts, I think for 2019, Bright, for my gym. And it's like Daemon Genmon, and it is a Haitian saying, and it basically means behind mountains, more mountains. And the whole point about that is that when it comes to that idea of discomfort and living in discomfort, it is the understanding that when it comes to challenge in life, the mountains are there whether you like it or not. It's not that enduring discomfort somehow makes life easier. What it means is that you get over more mountains. And this is what I'm infamous for when it comes to setting goals with my clients. They might have just completed their first ultra and they're at the finish line and they're like, that's the most amazing thing. I've been training for this for 12 months. And I'll be like, oh, I am so proud of you. This is amazing. What's next?
Yeah.
It's like, without breaking stride, it's always my go-to question. It's like, cool, if you don't know what's next, you haven't been preparing, because there has to be a next. And Spartan's great for that, because you can go competitive, or you can move into the world of the endurance stuff, like the hurricane heats and all of that stuff. We got Jim Bullard in here. Ooh, what are your strengths and weaknesses when it comes to Spartan races? Is that me? Are you addressing me, Andrew? Or is that just a general question? Is that both of us? Be specific in your questions, Andrew. Also, it's lovely to see you, sir. And we also have the indefatigable and sometimes offensive Jim Bullard. On board, he's been quite tame now.
He's a unique character.
I love it.
He'll
I think that idea of being discomfortable, being uncomfortable is so important. People don't understand it enough. And for me, I don't know whether you want to get to that point where you don't know whether you're like taking a break, whether you're entitled to it. That's kind of the way that I see it. I'm like, I want to feel guiltless when I take a break. I call it clarity. It's that idea of like being able to be uncomfortable so often, challenge yourself so often that you can, without any sort of second thought, just be able to say, you know what, I'm going to take a week off. Let's go play video games. Gonna do nothing. Gonna lie in bed for a week. And I think that's it's very cleansing for the mind. There's nothing holistic about you, Jim. Yes,
you can't go 100 miles an hour all the time. You will burn out. You've got to refill the tank every now and again.
Yes. Thanks for answering that, Matt. Back to you running the show.
All good. We've got a heap of comments coming in. Matty Probes wants to know where you get your ideas for the hurricane heat.
Matt,
we are going to get into that. We are going to talk hurricane heat.
Yes, we are.
Jim saying you enjoy my balls, Matt. Somebody said Matt grow a beard like Rich for GC, which I think is why Jim said I don't think Matt has the same level of testosterone as Richard. I certainly can't grow that much beard in like 2 months. I actually had a haircut today. I tend to let my beard grow until the point where it gets itchy and annoying, and then I cut it. And you have to sort of get through that part to get a beard, and I'm just not prepared to put that work in.
It doesn't last long, Matt. And considering we just had a big discussion about discomfort.
Yeah, I'm selective.
Want the beard? You got to get through the itchy stage. Okay, so let's address that question. Where do I get my ideas for hurricane heats? Yeah. One is, I think the most important thing is always starting with what you want the message to be and the outcome. So, for example, there's some adjustments going on with the hurricane heats at the moment in terms of exactly how they're presented. For example, amongst the global Krypteia stage, there's discussions about the warrior ethos. So the full warrior ethos, which we've always had, a discussion around whether that's appropriate in a world that, for the most part, doesn't glorify the military. So, whilst in the US, there is a heavy focus on the military, anyway, long story short, I would use those 4 ethos to help come up with my ideas. So I'd say, how will I communicate the warrior ethos? I will never quit to these people. Pretty simple. That was my favorite one, which is why I brought it up as an example. I'd think of shit that just, would make you want to quit. I'm like, okay, it's not that I'm trying to teach you to never quit. What I need to do is I need to make you want to quit. I have to make you understand that ethos. That's the only way to do it. So I just do stuff that was like, cool, hold on to an Atlas stone. I'm not going to tell you for how long. If you put it down, I'll restart the timer. And so you'd have these people just trying to keep these Atlas stones off the ground, and then someone would drop one, and I'd be like, oh, cool, let's reset. We wouldn't tell them what the goal would be, and we'd just pick a random number. I say random. Nothing's random in my hurricane heats. I plan everything. But then also you build upon that, and you figure out other things. Like you say, all right, you look for inspiration in the world, either other hurricane heats, other challenges. And it's about the outcomes. I think trying to figure out what lessons you want to teach people, and then you just work your way back from there. It's very easy. Another great one. Here's an infamous one for you. You'll be sad that you missed out on this one, Matt. I don't think you did this one. Anyway, so I started the mind games early. We sent out the gear list, and random is never random.
Just kick the door open.
Oh, well, that's all right. My cat's over there, so. I sent out the gear list, and included in the gear list was a can of animal food, and it was basically like dog food, cat food. I can't remember. Anyway, I think I even said somewhere along the lines of, I'm like, oh, make sure you get the good stuff. Don't get anything that isn't fit for human consumption. Yeah, Rob Cardillo knows what's up. Anyway, so they had to carry this around the whole time with them during the hurricane heat, and you heard stuff, and you hear people being like, no, they're going to make us eat it. Oh, there's no way they can make us eat it. Then I did a Fetch Boy Fetch. This was at YMCA Lake Duar Lodge. This is an amazing goat track, which we've only ever used once for the actual event, but I used it for the hurricane heat. And at the bottom, I put a jar, big jar. I couldn't see inside of it. And I said, all right, down you go. You got to grab one of the tokens, and you got to come back up. Yeah, you did, Rob. And they all go down, and reach in the jar, pull it out. There's a spoon. Hilarious. Some people have engraved these spoons with HH007, which was the event. Anyway, so they all come back up. This is one of the events. Oh, Mike Stewart with the shade of Rob Cardillo. Anyway, so they'll whip out their cans, and I say, all right, sit everybody down. This is right at the end. And they'll whip out their cans and their spoons. I'm like, all right, hold spoon in one hand, can of food in the other hand. And they're holding it all. And I'm like, these two are completely unrelated. All food that you have brought for animals is going to be donated to a local animal shelter. And the lesson that I was trying to teach them was, number one, if anybody tells you ever to eat dog food at an event that you have paid for, tell them to go fuck themselves, for starters, right? I'd be like, if you want me to eat something, you can first provide the food, and then two, it better be half decent. So that's the first lesson. Second lesson is, don't worry about things that you have zero information about. They knew they had a can of dog food. That was all. And they were allowing it to occupy their minds. They were allowing it to fatigue them emotionally during an incredibly arduous event. And I wanted to communicate with them. Don't worry about shit that doesn't matter. Don't worry about shit that you have either no control over or no additional information about. And that's personally, that helps me so much with my life. Like, I can just let go of stuff like that. I'm like, oh, well, I don't have information on that, so no point thinking about it any further.
Yeah.
And I don't.
100%. That's something that's I've had this exact same conversation with 20, 30 people in the last couple of weeks about GC. Are they going to be able to travel to GC? And I'm like, well, look, you got fucking two ways of looking at it. You can either think that you're going to be okay, and then you're going to feel okay about it for the next few weeks, and then if at the last minute you find out you can't, fuck, is what it is. Or you can think, fuck, I'm not going to be able to, and be miserable for weeks. What's the difference? Like, be optimistic. But
Jim's bringing up a piece of notorious hurricane heat history here, the Nourishment Bowl from the 12-hour hurricane heat in Picton, where they took everybody's food away from them. So glorious move. All right. I love this, right? It completely pulled the rug out from anybody, especially all the performance athletes. And, I was just getting into race nutrition at that point, and I was like, okay, all right, cool. They've taken my food. I had a plan. Plan's out the window, because I was like, I know everything about performance nutrition that I need to know for myself for this event. And then at a point during the night, they put half of our food there, and they said, okay, cool. You can go in and you can take like 10 items from the pool of food. And it was just like everybody's food. So you had to go in and find something. Now, the other half, they actually put in a big, into a big, it was a bin effectively, and like mixed it all up with a bunch of water. So you had like
amazing
ham and cheese rolls floating with bars, floating with like Gatorade tablets. I'm vegetarian, so they fished me out an apple, which was very nice. But everybody else had to like scoop a bowl and like a cup of it and like chug it. There were things I liked about that hurricane heat, and there were things I didn't like about it. Whilst I participated in everything, to me, like kicking sand in somebody's face is just, I think there's cleverer ways to break people or make people want to quit than simply being a douchebag to them. So that's what I looked at that hurricane heat as being, there were great parts to it, and then there were not great parts to it. And I looked to the second half, which was run by some effectively ex-special forces soldiers. And the first half was run by, not really by ex-special forces. And they did a lot of yelling. They did a lot of trying to insult you and just like lots of PT. The second that this guy took over, it was amazing, because he's like, hey, everybody, my name's, gave us his name. And then he said, I'm not going to yell at you. I expect you to listen. If you don't hear me, I'm not going to repeat myself. So that means you're going to need to be quiet and pay attention. And, we're all sitting there after about 6 hours, just like going like, oh shit. And then he's like, okay, so this next thing, you need to pick up one of these torsion bars. You're going to need to complete a 3.2 kilometer run. So that is all the way out to there and back. And you need to make it back in time or you're cut. And we're like, okay. And he's like, we're not going to tell you what the time limit is. Go. And like, you just had to go. And you just had to go. And I think I can't remember. It might have been Josh Perizzolo. I can't remember. But I just remember like there was like 4 people in front of me. And I'm like, okay, I can't beat these guys, but I can try and keep them in sight. And if I can keep them in sight, I'm sure that I'm doing okay. But to me, that was just, it was perfect. It's like, okay, take a torsion bar, run, and you don't know how long you have. And they were so precise, because there was a guy like sprinting, and, we were all at the finish line and we could hear them, and they're like, oh, there's about 30 seconds to go. And so this guy's coming in and we're like, run. It's like, you've only got seconds. And he comes in, and the Krypteia at the time, he basically looked at his watch. He's like, congratulations, fantastic effort. You cut. It was like 1 second. He's like, you cut. And it's like, they had zero concessions, which I loved. They did what they said, and it was great, because honestly, that was the hardest part. When I picked up the hurricane heats and started running them, the hardest part for me was in the 12 hours, cutting people who had fought so long to be there. I ended up having to turf the responsibility to other people for my first one. I was like, oh man, I need you to go cut these people. It's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. These people have been doing hurricane heats with me for the last 6 months, last 8 months. And I know that they've been training hard for this. We've got to kick them.
Yeah. It's hard, but I guess the 12-hour comes with a lot more prestige. I find the 4 hours are getting easier, in that they're a lot more team based now, and providing you push hard, it's pretty hard to get cut. I've only seen people get cut, on a medical DQ, or if they just tap out, if they're like, fuck it, I can't do this. But the 12s, you've got to have a pretty good level of fitness. I would say they're harder than an ultra.
Absolutely. And this is one of the things that I especially with my 12 hours, I really wanted to make sure that there were something different. I didn't want them to just be about fitness. I wanted them to be about all of the things that we celebrate as a Spartan. And I wanted there to be opportunities for people to excel in different ways. Before we even started, we were talking about the fact that when I make them, I always think, okay, there's a couple of different people out there. Yeah, bring back that was the 12-hour. I gave everybody 3 zip ties at the start. And I'm like, if you lose one, you cut, and we cut a lot of people. Yeah. So no, it was if you lost all 3. So you could fail. You could be strategic, and this was the thing. There were things that people could fail at, and things that they could not fail at, because they're like, okay, I can't fail at this because this is the only thing I can do. Whereas they could be strategic, and they're like, oh well, this one's pure strength or pure endurance. I'm gonna have to let go of this one. I will actually. I will make an admission. One of the best races, which I never did, and I regret it. Maybe not regret it. I didn't ever have opportunities to do it. Was one called the Survival Race, and that was one of their tactics early on. So if you ever want to go look up a piece of history, Survival Race is an old event, and it was crazy. It was like 75 kilometers. 25 kilometers of it was off trail and required navigation. Another 25 kilometers was like trail running. And anyway, but that was a big part of what they did. They had a series of tasks, and when you got to a checkpoint, you had to have enough completed tasks to receive that. It was like you get like a lanyard for your wrist, and everyone you collected said something different. Jim Bullard actually went and did one of these, so he knows it better than me. But effectively, every lanyard you'd got would say like, yeah, survival run. There, that's it, survival run, not survival race. And it would be like, the first one you got is fail. So if you couldn't make it any further, you go home with a lanyard that says fail. Next one was I. So if you go home at checkpoint 2, it's I fail. Then it was I did fail. And then the last one that you guessed says not. So I did not fail. So
that's cool.
Heaps of people just didn't even get to the end of the race. But it'd be crazy shit. It'd be like you have to light a fire, then you have to carry it across a river, and then get it going at the other side. But you could be strategic, and you could say, okay, well, that's going to take a lot of time. But how difficult is it compared to other elements of this race? I don't know what's ahead of me. There could be incredibly easy things or incredibly hard things. This could be the easiest thing, and if I tap out on this one. So it was really strategic in the way that affected your mindset. And that's exactly what I want to do with all the hurricane heats. But you're not wrong. The 4-hour is designed, as opposed to being, the perspective on them is shifting. As opposed to considering them as after you do the events, it's more like sprint and 4-hour, almost like, or maybe 4-hour and super parallel. And then your ultra and your 12-hour are parallel to one another. They are either as hard as one another, or in that same ballpark. And the point behind that was that it allows us to explore a different part of Spartan, which is you can obviously experience that camaraderie on the field. But at the end of the day, the sprints and the supers and the beasts and even the ultras to a lesser effect are still, they're completionist in nature. You can simply be incredibly stubborn, go through, fail every obstacle, do your burpees, and finish at the end. Whereas the 4 hours and the 12 hours, there is the opportunity to fail there, and that's they're the things you want. And I've even said to people at hurricane heats, I've even said to I think this was picked in 2019 maybe, or 2018. I remember I said to him, I'm like, you guys sucked. I'm like, I was actually really disappointed with this hurricane heat because you guys did not come together as a team at all. You all finished, but you didn't do a good job as Spartans. And I was pretty honest with them because they didn't. Whereas I then remember another event, and they just came together like that, like the first challenges. Yeah, Rob, that's right. Yeah, you remember that, don't you? It's embedded in your memory. I've seared it in there. You'll never forget my voice on that hill.
Was that last year?
I think I've made them crawl up more than once. No, it was 2018.
2018.
What year
was
is
that?
It, Matt?
Was that the year that Rob did the 12-hour and then the full trifecta?
Most
likely. I swear I saw him on Sunday. I passed him and he looked like fucking Bilbo Baggins with a big stick, and he was just speaking in tongues at like 2 p.m. on the Sunday. It was fucking spent.
Yeah, 2018. There you go. He knows it. He remembers. This is one of the things that I love about Spartan as well. Obstacle races, 12 hours, 4 hours. Everything is. It creates milestones in our lives, and that's what I always say. I'm like, life is not about. It's not a continuum. It's why you need to have adventures. It's like my personal motto, or my business motto is health and well-being needs to be adventurous and proactive. And the adventurous part's really important because it's so crucial for us to walk away with these memories of these things. There's Chris talking about carrying the buckets of water up Mount Mystic.
That was last year.
Was fun. Yeah, that was last year.
I played in a bit of that action.
Yes. Oh, you did the 4 hour. Did you do the 4 hour for that?
Yeah, we had a baby version of it. I know they
prepared buckets. Effectively, I had it in my mind. I'm like, I'll get the 4 hour guys to prepare the buckets.
Yeah, it was ugly.
Yes.
Jim's saying the Survivor run ran in 2, and I managed the 3rd.
Yep. Yes. And
you also
it was a real shame.
Sorry.
Go.
No, I was saying you also said something interesting just before we jumped on the live about crafting the hurricane heats and how you think about who's participating. And I think you were about to talk about it, then we went off on a bit of a tangent, that you say you'll give something for the Rob Cardillo will be able to win, or the Quentin Gill or the Josh Perizolo, but then something for Sam Ralston to win.
Exactly. That's right. Because and it's I think it's so important when you're designing these things. Like Sam Rawson is a machine, but she'll be the first to admit that she's not crazy fast. She will keep on going. She won't give up. But there needs to be elements in there where she will win. And I remember I'll use that example again, which was that I created a memory challenge because I know specifically that Sam's brain works very, very differently to other people. And so she's got just about like a photographic memory pretty much. She's crazy. And I remember that guy I was talking to you about, I forget his name, but he smashed everybody out of the water with how fast he was, right? He was amazing. But he got to the top of the hill for the memory challenge and he had none of them. He had literally none of them. And it's exactly how I envisioned it. I'm like, I bet you the fastest person would just fly up that hill. And number one, their brain is like so drained of blood. It's just, pumping through their legs that it's just not going to work. They've put themselves into friggin' like rocket fuel mode, whereas Sam, she's in diesel mode, right? So she's going up the hill and everything's still functioning correctly, plus her brain. She got to the top of the hill and she said, okay, I can give you all the quotes and I can tell you what books they're from. And I was like, all right, I'll give you extra points if you can tell me what books they're from. And she did an awesome job. She I think got a couple of the books right as well. Unfortunately, a few of them were like quotes from multiple, anyway. But the point was that, like, that's, I think, exactly how it should be, because that would mess with a fit person's brain, because they're climbing up this hill and they're like, oh man, like I need to try and get at least one of these. I'm gonna get at least one of these. What happens if I don't get any of them? Do I get cut? And so it's such a crucial part, I think, of the hurricane heats, but also fitness, well-being in general, challenging ourselves. We have to understand our strengths and we have to work to them, and we also have to understand our weaknesses. Andrew Steinhubel was actually asking about that. He was saying, what are our strengths and weaknesses, Matt, when it comes to obstacle racing? Where's my mess? There we go.
Are you asking me? Sorry, I was just going.
I'm asking you. What's your strength? What's your strength in obstacle racing?
I'm strong. I'm strong, man. I can carry shit. I can go a long time. I can go diesel mode for a long time. Things like Atlas stones, I can just chuck them under my shoulder. I don't really have any problem. But I fucking don't like running. Like I'm not a runner, man. I don't like to run. And until I hit a point in my life where I'm like, you know what, I really like to run. I will never stand at the top of a podium because I'm just not fast. But I love to get out there and do a hurricane heat with 20 clients, or take a team through an event, or get out and do a hurricane heat into an ultra, into a sprint super, and chat with every person on the mountain and hug every volunteer. Like, I think that's the amazing thing about Spartan, is it is a different thing for every person that's there. You're there for your own reason. But yeah, definitely I'm stronger on the obstacles, not so fast. What about
I
yourself?
will take contention with the fact that you said you're not a runner, because the important thing to remember is that a runner is someone who runs.
Yeah,
And
true.
if you put upon yourself that caveat of, oh, well, I'm only a runner if I'm fast, you got to remember, sir, you are a trainer. Imagine all of the people who you train going
Yeah,
like,
true.
well, does that mean I'm
True.
not a runner just because I'm slower than Matt?
True.
No.
I can
Shame on you,
probably
sir.
clarify that, and I probably should.
I
There are
know what you
many
mean.
things.
I've said it before myself. I've said
Yeah,
it before myself. I'm like, oh, I'm not a runner, and it's the first thing that leaps to mind, because you want to defend yourself against people like Quentin Gill, who is both fast,
big
graceful,
Gilly goat.
handsome, kind, frustratingly good at running. And I think sometimes we imagine that he's just like that. I
Quite
always
handsome too. Did you see the photo he posted in the spa last week?
I think I definitely.
Guy's a fucking model.
Yes, he is. Yes. We have a future together, me and Quentin.
Cool.
He doesn't quite know about it.
Will
But
there be
like
beards?
there'll be one beard, that's for sure. But
Have you heard the
okay.
song "Sex with a Bearded Man"? Fantastic.
I don't know. No, I
It's
don't
by a
think
band
so.
called The Beards. It's called "Sex with the Bearded Man." It was in the hottest 100 like 5 years ago, and it's fucking incredible. I'll send it to you.
What number did it reach?
I couldn't tell you, man. I'd have to look in my
Okay,
phone.
fair.
It was in the
Andrew,
100.
my strength shouldn't. I know, but
I
that's
wrote it down. I'll remember to send it to you.
it's probably everybody with a beard voted, which back then was it was the style at the time.
Yeah. Craft beer and beards.
So, Andrew, my greatest strength, I think, is my ability to suffer continuously until my body fails. That allows me to achieve many things. And the way I see it is, if your body isn't physically stopping you, then what is? So I trained my brain a long time ago to relish in those facts. And it was funny because I remember um, at one point I realized how insidious that little voice in your head can be when it's trying to convince you to quit. And this is what I define quitting as, because I'm not one who's like, okay, quitting is when you say, oh, I quit, I can't be bothered doing this anymore. That's obvious. You know that you've quit. You know you're a quitter. You've made that decision. There's more complexities behind it, but the real dangerous voice is the one that tries to convince you that it's not what you want to do anymore. It's a lot quieter. It's a lot more interesting. And I remember I was doing Oscar's hut to hut, and I was at about 77 kilometers. It's coming up I think it's Mount Speculation. And my pack had like chafed the shit out of my back, and I literally free flow blood. And I thought I was pretty tough. So I'm going up this hill, and, we had to run down as well. So I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. But what came into my mind was, I'm like, yeah, man, this is a great challenge for you. This is a great challenge. I reckon after this, I'm gonna switch it up. I'm just gonna focus on my short distance running. I'm gonna try and get really fast. I'm gonna try and get back into the elite sprints and stuff like that. And it took me like an hour, and I'm like, I recognize your voice. You can't hide yourself. You're trying to make me not want to do endurance events anymore. You want me not to pick a harder event than this. You don't want me to go any further. And that is the challenging one. That's that voice that's the real one. And that's what I think people, performance athletes and people, like ourselves, or people who've been doing Spartans for a while, you have to watch out for that. So a long time ago, I basically trained myself. I'm like, okay, anytime I am confronted with a fork in the road, you have to pick the harder one, no matter what. Even today, like I said, I went out for a big run, and I got to a point, and I was like, oh man, my knee's starting to tweak a little bit. And I'm like, I don't want to do any damage to it. This is my first long run in a while. I'm like, okay, so when I get to this point, I know I can carve off and come into the car park early, and I'll look after my knee. And I was like, oh, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. I'm like, tell you what, if your knee starts hurting, you can walk the rest of the way. Who gives a shit? I blew straight past it. And I was like, there's the turn off. Because I was like, I know what you have that fork in front of you. And that's part of that whole mentality of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. It's not about necessarily going and seeking huge challenges like Spartan. It's like, okay, you're on your run and you're like, okay, that way's longer, that way's shorter. I was only going to do a 5K today. If it enters your mind that I'm taking it for the fact that it's shorter, go the longer way, even if it's not part of your plan. Show that voice who's boss. Now, my weakness, I don't do enough prehab and rehab. I don't. The end. That would probably be it. Like I like the sexy stuff. I like training. I like running. I like hurting. I like events. The maintenance stuff, and I am sorry, Rebecca Herft, if you are watching this, it's not something that interests me. But I always feel the best, like emotionally, when I am structuring that into my lifestyle. When I'm like, okay, 3 times a week, I'm going to do mobility work, and I'm going to do 20 minutes, and I'm going to, self-treat myself with the Theragun and stuff like that. I think it's not the sexy stuff, but it's the important stuff. And I'm like a real efficient person. So I'm always like, I need to spend my time as efficiently as possible. And like 20 minutes of sitting still doesn't feel efficient to me, even though I know it is. Yeah, Caitlin, I know it's not sexy, but we got to do it. And that's why my knee was hurting today, because I don't do enough rehab. And it's why my hips were tight when I was running at the 15K mark, because I don't do enough stretching.
Do you
what are we talking about now?
I was going to say, how do you, if you've got something that you may be struggling to get yourself to do, so you're talking about the mobility, what are the tools you use from an accountability standpoint? Because I think just going willpower, it can be a bit treacherous. I think willpower is not always there. I think the more you reinforce willpower, the stronger that gets, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, is there something that you use as an accountability tool, or something you put in place to sort of force yourself to do it?
It's a very good question. I guess if I'd figured out how to get myself to do prehab and rehab consistently by now, I would. I think with anything, when you're trying to build up consistency, part of it is again that clarity that I spoke about before. It's that ability to understand and turn around and say, right, okay, maybe I don't do as much prehab and rehab as I should do, but I also look after myself quite well. I train well. I train smart. So I try and make sure that the vast majority of my training is mobility based. So I'll structure it in that way. I'll find ways that interest me there. I'll make sure that as many lifestyle choices as possible are leading me towards that. Like I've got a stand-up desk. As much as I'm sitting down now, I did run a half marathon today. So I will sit down if I want to.
You've earned it.
Thank you. Yes. But also just little things like, making sure that you warm up correctly, making sure that you don't spend too long sitting down. As soon as lockdown hit, I put the move timer on my watch, which I've never had to have before, right? After like a couple of weeks, I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to need that feature now. Taking the little things there and figuring out the ways to dress it up as much as possible. Failing that, join a group class, go join a group and be like, all right, cool. I'm going to hold myself accountable by having somebody else hold me accountable for stuff like this. I'll get massages, I'll get treatments back when I could. So that's another way. Like, you figure out ways to make it attractive to yourself. And sometimes that is investing in it. So just the same as I would say to someone who's struggling with their health and well-being, I'm like, go get a personal trainer if you're struggling so much. They'll do the heavy lifting for you. I'll go and get massages. Student massages are great. They're cheap, and I can usually talk them through everything. I'm like, no, a little to the left. I don't feel as bad like directing students what to do, as opposed to if I go and see like a professional. I'm like, do they know more than me? At least with the students, I'm like, they don't know more than me. I'm happy with this.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. That's it's a good bit of advice. Have some skin in the game.
Yes,
you're struggling with anything.
Absolutely. Invest.
Invest in yourself. You wanted to talk about the history of Spartan in Australia and sort of how it's evolved and where it currently stands. What would you like to say about that?
Well, I think it's really interesting. The vast majority of Spartans, I guess, they have like this real inkling of exactly what Spartan is on the surface, but like understanding the cogs that I guess make the inexorable machine turn elude most people. And so understanding that, I think, is a really big part of it, and knowing that, you know, behind the scenes there's always stuff going on. And it also, I think, helps with a lot of it goes into a lot of understanding for being like, okay, cool, okay, I can see where there can be some restrictions. You know, we've had those questions before of like, okay, Gold Coast 12-hour hurricane heat, what's going on with that? Like, you have to understand that there's actual restrictions in place, and those restrictions are there for a reason. And we're not talking about COVID. We're talking about Spartan. So, and it's different all over the world, but effectively what happens is you've got Spartan, which is the brand we all know and love, and they are it's a parent company. So effectively what they do is they'll license off their IP to different organizations in different countries. And so you could pitch, and you could say, you could pitch to Spartan and say, cool, I want to have the license for Spartan Cambodia, or Spartan Australia and New Zealand, or Spartan Tahiti. All right. I think we have like a sort of general Asia Pacific thing going on with us. Off the record, is there any new locations and dates for Spartan next year?
I had heard a possibility of
I know nothing. Location. I see nothing. It's just like, yeah, look, there's always new locations, but like, is it going to be something we all enjoy, like Canberra, or is it going to be something that nobody likes, like
Canberra?
Yes. So there's, you know, that's all part of it, right? So there's restrictions that are put in place. So, for example, Australia and New Zealand is owned by a licensee. It's not owned by Spartan. They are not Spartan employees. And they are the employees of a company which holds the license. Tough Mudder does it very similarly as well. I just got a message. Jesus, is this? Am I being told to shut my mouth? The man's got his foot on my neck.
They're tuning in.
No, Mick, I'm not sidestepping. I'm getting there, buddy. Jeez, I just want to give it context. Mick's messaging me because he didn't want to message on the group chat. Anyway, so Australia and New Zealand owned by a licensee. But the funny thing is, when it comes to the hurricane heats, Spartan is actually very protective of their Krypteia. So Krypteia are actually a really weird breed, because we actually, speaking of sidestepping, we sidestepped the licensee agreement. So we are actually qualified and accredited by the head Krypteia, Andy Hardy, who is an absolute machine over in the US.
I did a 12-hour hurricane with Andy in Hawaii last year. She's amazing.
She's great. And the great thing is she's also, she was so on trend with everything I was doing with the hurricane heats. So like, I was doing all this crazy like mindset stuff and like tying it to the ethos and stuff before all the new stuff came in. I was getting hurricane heat candidates in to become Krypteia before it was actually, before there was even a process, and doing things like having, you know, people like Mick Stewart going and having to like shadow and assist at these events. And then Andy came in and she did all of that, and she systemized it, and she made it. And like, I was so happy when she came in, because I was like, she gets it. She gets what the hurricane heat is supposed to be. But anyway, so the Krypteia are all certified by the Spartan brand, but the licensees actually have a contract that says they have to run hurricane heats with Krypteia. So the funny thing is, they can't get rid of a Krypteia if they tried. And apparently someone tried. I'm not going to say what country it was. It wasn't Australia, New Zealand. It was another one. But Andy was telling me this story of how the licensee called her up and they're like, "No, they're fired. They're not a Krypteia anymore." And she went, "No, you're not going to hire them anymore, but they're still a Krypteia." And so they were like, "What do you mean?" And it's like, "Well, you didn't certify them. So if they come over to the US or they want to go to Australia or something like that, then yeah, they're still a Krypteia. You don't get to take that away from them. We take that away from them."
Is this sort of like, so that I sort of understand what you're saying. So say somebody goes in and buys a McDonald's franchise in Australia, right? You can set up your restaurant, and you're going to get the supply chain and everything, and obviously the branding that comes with it. But you can't just start selling your own fucking Hungry Jack's burgers in there, right? You've got to sell your shit. Also, you're going to probably have to use the contractors that are accredited through, you know, McDonald's to do the service work and stuff like that. So that's sort of what we're talking about, right?
Correct. If you want a giant, thriving, fantastic brand, then you don't get to go in and tell them how to suck eggs. Like, you actually have to get involved. Andrew, no, it's not a cop out. Andrew's saying that I copped out by saying, like, I genuinely don't know anything about next year. I don't even know what the first event of the year is. Was there a calendar release? Whilst I'm in isolation, I've also completely shut my doors to all communication. Matt has got me at a rare moment here where I decided to be on the internet.
I got him in a moment of weakness.
Despise. Yes, yes. So I genuinely don't know anything. Sorry, Andrew. Yeah, we do. That's right. And that's the thing about Krypteia. Like, you can go anywhere in the world as a Krypteia and you can help out at events, and you just go, you contact the local licensing. Hey, can I come and help at one of your events, one of your hurricane heats? I'm a Krypteia. Contact Andy and she'll fill you in. And so it's actually a really cool accreditation, and it's why there has been quite a high standard put on it now. And, there's a fitness test that you've got to complete. There's a leadership course you have to do. You've got to be SGX qualified. You have to have a background in either the military or endurance events. You then have to be vouched for by your local lead Krypteia or a lead Krypteia in the region that you want to operate in. So, for example, I'm the only lead Krypteia in Australia and New Zealand, probably because I'm the only one left from the old days. But also just because I can't go anywhere. I love it too much. But nonetheless, the whole point is, like, the hurricane heat instructors, they got to go through a lot. And in a lot of the cases, like, I volunteered on hurricane heats for 4 years. Pure volunteer, like, there every time. I got kicked out a couple of times to have to do them, so I was like kicked out of Krypteia to make sure my accountability was high. Like, this was back when Max was running. So, perfect example, right? So Max used to be the licensee, Max and Paul. So Paul, who was our race director, Max was the co-owner with Paul at the time, and so the license changed hands at some point. I went to a different company. I won't talk about them because obviously I like to respect people's privacy, so maybe they don't want to know people to know what their company name is. But the point being that Max was so involved in all the hurricanes, and it's funny because you talk about McDonald's and how the brand is becoming more streamlined in terms of exactly what people can and can't do. Stuff like, okay, well, where's the fortress gone? Right, number one, it's at my gym. We got part of the fortress. Number two, it's not standardized. It means the insurance that Spartan is trying to get to, make sure that everything's standardized. The training for even, you think, SGX coaches. It's like, okay, here's how you train people to overcome obstacles, except in Australia, because they also have this crazy thing called fortress. You'll have to go there to learn about that. It's so that they can obviously be a better brand, and so that if you go to Hawaii. And this is a funny thing, because a couple of people I know didn't have a great experience going to a Hawaii event because they were like, it was not up to standard. It was not like an Australian event. And it's because that was before a lot of these things came in, and they were having quality control issues everywhere. And whilst it does mean some of the cool stuff, like the fortress, comes down, it also means that if you go to like a country where there's a licensee who's not up to scratch, that license will be pulled from them. And if they're not pulling their weight, then they'll be brought to, they will be held accountable, and someone else will step in. And it's happened lots of times. It's happened many times where licensees have lost their license because they weren't living up to the standard or the brand. And I think it's such a tough thing to do, but it is important, I think, for Spartan to make sure that the right people are running the events, even if they don't understand it. At least they've got the handbook and they can stick to that. I think it's always better when you have people who understand the brand, who are also the licensees. So Spartan is a very strange animal. You can't just step in and think, oh, it's a mass participation event. I've run millions of those. Spartan is something different. Spartan is not the race. It is the people. And so you have to understand them.
You said something earlier about Tough Mudder and Spartan. And now Tough Mudder is
Yes.
just an event, but Spartan is a community. And me, being an OCR coach, and what I do is I'm always looking out for these communities that I can join online, these Facebook groups. There are a fucking shitload of Spartan groups. There are like almost no Tough Mudder groups. Like they just don't exist.
And this is the interesting thing, right? So when it comes to business models, that is the thing that you need to tap into. If you, and it was funny, I love listening to podcasts, especially about business. And I remember one where they were interviewing the owner of Bounce. So, trampoline parks, all that stuff. They realized early on that they had, number one, a great idea, but also two, a terrible, terrible problem. And that problem was that everyone would go to Bounce and then they would go to their school or their workplace. Oh man, I went to Bounce on the weekend. It was great. They don't say, I go to Bounce. You go to the gym.
Sure.
You don't go to Bounce.
Sure.
You went to Bounce.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Tough Mudder. I've done a Tough Mudder as opposed to I am Spartan. Those are two very, very different things and very powerful. And it doesn't matter what business you're in. You have to create that community. You have to create a place for people to be. 100%. And I think it is one of the things that's the hardest things to do for a licensee is to tap into that community and to recognize and reward it and treat it with respect, because that's the only thing that gets you. It's the only thing that builds the event, and it's what you have to focus on. You have to focus on bringing people into the community, not just running checkboxed events.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's a fragile thing, building that community and keeping it, keeping that fire going. And once you betray the trust of that community, it can be very hard to recover from.
Absolutely. Like I remember like, we were talking about the Canberra event, and the biggest backlash was not the fact that the event had moved. It was the way that it was communicated. It was that everybody felt frustrated by. It
was like a bait and switch.
Yeah. And like, without kind of talking too much about it, which I'm happy to do. I think that it was one of those things where it was like, okay, Spartans are okay with adversity. They're okay with changes. And you want to make sure that, like you said, you treat it with respect. And I think, again, and this is why Spartan is such a powerful brand, is because the community will put up with so much. They will tolerate a lot for this thing that they love, and this thing that, in a lot of cases, in so many people's cases, has changed their lives. I built my entire business around it. I've built my mindset from it. I've learned so many things about myself from it. And so, if you see it being treated without respect, if you see it being used for purposes other than that of the community, and to build and grow and respect that community, then it hurts. And you definitely that's luckily the people at the top, like Joe DeSena, is, whilst he's a businessman, he is Spartan, like through and through. Like he's the guy who makes so many of the decisions based on, like, not always based on what's smart for business. He will make decisions based on what's like a Spartan decision. I spent like a full day hiking with this guy through the mountains, and that is how he's driven.
Was that the hut to hut that you mentioned when you said you had the chafe? Was that the one?
No. So I did it a couple of years ago, and then last year I did it with Max and Joe. So I did like we did one lap called the Archies, and then they went out for another one, and I went to sleep. But I remember, complete segue. Very few people know about this, but he actually his shoe got bitten by a brown snake.
Oh, really?
So like, him and Max were walking ahead, and I was, I can't remember, I was fucking around with my pack or something like that. And I'm just like, so I was behind him by about, 5-6 meters. And I just kind of look up, and Joe and Max are just walking. And then suddenly this stick just goes like on his shoe. And I'm like, Joe, did you just feel anything in your foot? He's like, no, why? And I'm like, you just got bit by a snake, man. And he's like, no, I don't think it got me. I think it just got the shoe. And like me and Max are just looking at each other and we're like, we nearly just killed Joe DeSena. Like that was going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. And it wasn't a big one. And it's the little ones you got to watch out for because they got
the angry
bad
fuckers.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like the juvenile snakes always have more potent venom as well.
Yeah.
And this thing, it literally just like he stepped it's kind of like this close to its head. And that's why it bit him, because it was like so close.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that is interesting. But the guy's crazy. Were you following the Spartan Games at all? That's been happening like the weekend just passed.
If it's on the internet, I don't. Unfortunately.
So they run this Spartan Games event. It's all been very hush-hush, and they had like 24 athletes from a couple of different disciplines come in, and they basically run this like huge CrossFit 6-day event, and they had them fucking wrestling and mountain biking and doing all sorts of stuff. And there's a little bit of controversy around. I saw Matt B. Davis from Obstacle Racing Media interviewing Nicole Miracle, and she said that Joe came in like in the middle of like one fucking night when they were chilling out, and he's like to all the athletes, "Hey guys, I want you all to come and, just carry some fucking rocks with me." And they're all like, what the fuck? And like the team from Spartan are like, "Joe, no, we spoke about this," like chastising the kid. And he's like, no, come on, it'll be fun. Like, he's just a maniac.
He is. It's like in the middle of like this thing, and I guarantee you there would have been a huge amount of effort, and he would have been the one who spearheaded this whole thing. But he just can't help himself. He's like, it's not Spartan. It's just, he's like, we're gonna throw some mud in the spanner works or whatever you call it. Like, I can see him doing that.
He lives it, man. He practices what he preaches.
Yeah,
I chatted to him that next day after the heart to heart. He was a little bit ginger. He was limping at the Marvel.
Yeah. Oh mate, he didn't prepare for it. He was the first one to say, he's like, I have not prepared for this. I'm not ready. And he also spent 72 hours traveling before he got there. And literally like went to sleep, woke up, started a 100-kilometer event. So talk about not being like physically prepared. But he loved it. He loved struggling. He was everything in Australia is trying to kill you, Jim. Specifically though, Jim. Jim is the top of that list. Jim.
He's savage. Jim knows all about doing tough shit for no apparent fucking reason. One turned up to my sand dunes boot camp at Cronulla, literally dragging a fucking big log that had like a chain attached to it, and he was just dragging the fucking log through the sand, just because he thought that would be a good idea.
Whilst I appreciate that, like, that's something that's usually not a sight. I've known Jim for too long. Like, I'm usually surprised when he doesn't have a chain wrapped around something and he's dragging it.
Yeah, true. Sorry, I'm just shutting that door. I can hear Dom making some food that's delicious. I can smell it. So we were talking about franchising and Spartan Australia obviously being on rails a little bit. They're confined in what they do. Some of the decisions come from up high, and you said before that franchisees have been booted out of organisations before. I'm very certain it's actually happened in Spartan. I'm pretty sure they went into Canada and booted the franchisee out a while ago. So they are watching.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. They have a team. They have a compliance team. So you probably met her, Denise Mast. She's in charge of compliance. She is again an amazing Spartan, and so this is smart decisions by whoever's employing these people. Denise is heavily involved in the Spartan mindset, the Spartan mentality, and every time I've spoken to her, she's such a high level of thinking and able to understand and balance out those challenging aspects from a business perspective, which is, okay, well, we need to check all the boxes, but we also need to understand what is and is not Spartan. And the hard thing is, again, like, they came and they watched a hurricane heat, and there was a few things where Denise came up and she's like, can't do that anymore. And, I was just like, cool, I understand it. It still hurt though, because I'm like, who are you to tell me, who's been doing these hurricane heats for 6 years now, how to run a hurricane heat? And you just got to swallow your pride a little bit. And you're going to be like, yeah, cool. No, I understand it. I get it. And I know the direction that it's heading in, because the more that everybody gets on board with this, that's when we can start to do the crazy stuff. It's when they're too busy turning around and having to worry a lot about like quality control and compliance that they can't innovate. And you know, Denise's job, it's a tough one, because she's basically got to go up to Spartans and say, hey, guess what? That ain't Spartan. And that's a tough job, especially when you're talking to people like me. It's like I've got to be on board with what they're trying to do, and that's something which I understand and I respect it a lot, and it's why I try and make myself a part of the solution more often than the problem. So like I'm always passing information up the chain, and I'm like, talking to Andy, for example, I'm like, hey, we had some really good stuff happen at a hurricane heat. This stuff worked really well. This stuff didn't work really well. And she's great. She does they do a lot of listening, which is something that's not always, you don't always expect that from a big brand, is that they're actually listening. And like you said, watching Canada went into administration. So effectively what happened was in a completely novel situation, they actually did step in and they took over as a brand. So the team in the US, what they do with that in the future, nobody knows. I'm all for innovating in business, so I'm always trying to make some changes. I like test out new ideas. So maybe they're testing out a new way to get into new regions. Maybe they're thinking, okay, well, maybe we'll just run the whole show. Who knows? Like, that's above my pay grade.
Yeah. Jim's just got a bail. He's got a warrior chat in 5 minutes. I don't know what a warrior chat is, but it sounds possibly more interesting.
Nobody knows.
I don't know. Should we go and watch the warrior chat?
Rude. I for one am having a great time.
I was talking about us both.
I haven't spoken to people in a very long time. I haven't spoken to Spartans in a very long time. Like I said, I'm not only in lockdown, but the thing's not really doing much at the moment in the world. So
how are you dealing with it, man? Because obviously you run a business down there. You run a gym. You've got an amazing community down at This Is. I'm certainly feeling the sting from, I guess, being severed from the community. How are you dealing with it?
It's tough, buddy. And like it's one of the things I think that is probably, it's not the loss of freedom so much as what you did with that freedom, I think, that affects people. And for me, the things that I loved doing was I liked going to events. I liked doing Spartan. I liked working film and television and doing stunt stuff, health and fitness, all of those things gone, but it is, I guess, the lessons that you can learn from any situation, and also the appreciation. I think it's always good to get existential at times like this. In the grand scheme of things, 1 year of our lives is not a great deal. And again, this is something that people in the past have lived through with far less technology, far less community, and far less connectivity. And so it's about taking all of that into perspective and imagining, back when the Spanish flu happened in 1944, 1914, I think, or something like that.
1914 to like 1920 or something.
Yeah.
It was a long time.
Right. You think about that, and you think about not having the ability to do wonderful things like this. And I by nature, I'm a very private person, but the funny thing is there's been a lot of challenges during lockdown that have had nothing to do with lockdown. And so that helps put things in perspective as well. It's like there are people who are suffering in the world regardless of all of this. And for some people, lockdown is going to end. And for other people, things don't get to end, and they still have to go through the challenge that they face every day. I have specific, you think about people who are incarcerated unfairly, or you think about people with chronic illnesses or things like that. And there's just some things that
born in the wrong fucking place, man. Like people who are just born with the chips stacked against them.
Absolutely. And so it's another reason why I actually think things like Spartan are important, because if you have the ability to go out and enjoy events like this, you almost have an obligation to. to respect the people who don't get these opportunities in their lives. And so, yeah, I'm not going to lie, it's actually been a really big struggle. So I've divorced myself from a lot of communication, especially, like I said, in the world. I rarely did any social media stuff before this, but now it's even less. It's almost, I'm aiming for zero, and just trying to, I guess, yeah, you figure out what you want in the world and then you go after it, make that happen. And then hopefully Spartan's in there somewhere in the future.
Yeah. I think one thing that I'm seeing in a big way, and tragic, obviously, what's happening in Melbourne with you guys still being on strict lockdowns and the rest of the country not. But we've seen this huge knee jerk in that people are thinking you guys are not locked down, but we are. And this one of my favorite quotes is comparison is the thief of joy. And you said earlier, you choose to just focus on the things that you have control over, and some things you don't have control over. And if you focus on the things you don't have control over, you're gonna have a fucking bad time.
Exactly. For anyone who's complaining about Dan Andrews, I'm like, okay, well, you should have got into politics 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, where the fuck are you? You want to be the premier? Be the premier. All right.
Yeah.
But you're not, so you don't get to make decisions at times like this. And complaining about it is like, okay, well, it's not going to do anything. And the other thing is, like, I hate talking politics. Absolutely hate it. But I think we can talk humanity a little bit. There needs to be a better perspective on what is standing up for things. People who are saying, I'm standing up for freedom by not wearing a mask. I'm like, you're not standing up for freedom. You're standing up for not wearing a mask. Like, that is not standing up for freedom. Also, you live in like a democratic neoliberal society, which is not about freedom. It is actually about concession of liberties for, communal benefits like roads and hospitals. Like, if you want to be free, move to a country with zero laws.
Yeah, or just go to like Nimbin in a caravan. You probably get away with a few out there.
Exactly. And so I just think that people stand up for things in the wrong way, and they stand up for, I just think that people need to pick their battles better. Like, standing up for other people is great, I think. And there's just so many other great causes out there that you could get involved in, with a mask, without a mask, who cares? Just like put your energy into something better. And this is something that I'm always very cautious of. And if we're talking health and well-being, it's always, where are you putting your energy? What are you putting it into? It can sometimes get a little bit exhausting, but I try and always think, is what I'm doing every day making me a better person in some way? And it can be, it's like anything else. You talked about willpower earlier, and the fact is, willpower is like a muscle. Anything you can get efficient and effective at. And it's what I try and do. I try and just like analyze every thought, analyze every action, analyze every moment for, is this moving me towards greatness and self-actualization, or is it holding me back? And you don't have to do it all the time, but if you don't do it any of the time, then it's going to take you a lot of energy, effort, and willpower to even just do it some of the time.
Yeah. I think this ties into why I like Spartan so much, and what I do as a coach. I think for us to be living, like, we need to always be advancing in one way or another. It might not always be fitness. Like, there might be times when I go, I'm going to ease off the gas with my exercise, and I'm just going to walk, and I'm going to listen to a heap of audio books, and I'm just going to build myself in a different way. But I think you just need to be moving forward in some fucking way. And it might be you're building your relationships, or you're connecting with your kids, or something like that, but you're always advancing somewhere. And sometimes that advancement comes at the cost of some loss of traction in another area.
It has to.
Sometimes, because that willpower is limited, right? So if you decide to put all of your energy into making a fitness change, your nutrition may slip a little bit.
It has to. So one concept which some people are aware of, some people aren't, it's called SAID, S-A-I-D, specific adaptations to imposed demand. It means that if you focus on multiple things, then none of them will reach a higher caliber. If you focus on one thing, it will reach a higher caliber, but to the detriment of other things. It's just the way that it works. We are limited in our time, our ability. We are only able to focus on so many things. So, for example, Mick Stewart over here. Okay, they're perfect, right? Schooling us on Nimbin, right? There are laws, apparently. Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you for correcting Matthew on that. I don't know where Nimbin is, so I have no idea.
It's the pot capital of Australia.
Only for the potheads.
Well, there's
or
a
do you
lot
mean
of
like
alternative
ceramics?
guys there. No, I meant like fucking spliffs, like reefer.
Okay, fair enough. Do you know what the ceramic capital of Australia is?
I couldn't tell you. No.
Me either.
Do you?
Isn't that interesting that you know what the pot capital is,
Well,
but you don't know the ceramic capital?
let me just
Jeez.
explain some of my interests in my teens. Never have been into pottery.
If any of our viewers out there are currently watching and know the ceramic capital of Australia, comment now. You'll win
Mick chipping in
something
again. Worked there
at the
back
back.
in the days of glassblower.
Fantastic, sir.
Do they do
That's
pottery
cool.
there
That's
as
a
well?
cool skill. I didn't know that about you. I'm filing that away in the list of things if I ever need something made out of glass to contact you about.
Glass blowing in a fucking future hurricane heat for sure.
Yeah, now we're talking. Only Mick will win. Mick's got to probably be our next Krypteia in Australia, actually, our next first certified Krypteia. So I'm very excited about that. So, Matt, what other questions you got for me? I'm raring to go.
we a couple of guys said we might have dodged something. I did see the comments, the cop out. We started talking about Spartan.
That was on events for next
rails.
year. I don't know anything about next year.
Okay,
I'm sorry, Andrew. I wish I did. If I did, I'd just dish the whole time.
Matt Probe's good at it. It's Canberra. The fucking
Thank you, Matthew. That's very handy. Good to know.
Canberra's coming.
I'll remember that. I am surprised that it's Canberra, like Canberra City. Is there a specific suburb? I'd like to be specific if somebody asks me. Healesville's quite good when it comes to ceramics.
Healesville,
yeah, there's some really cool stuff. Robert Gordon pottery for anybody. Some great stuff.
Cool. You're wearing a Spartan Queensland shirt. A question that came in before: Will you be at the hurricane heat in Gold Coast?
No, I will not. No, I'm not going up to Queensland.
We didn't want to dodge it. We just took a very roundabout route to answer it.
Yes. So unfortunately, I am not going to Gold Coast, Queensland. The challenge at Fishwick. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, sir. Filed away.
Also the home of fireworks.
Canberra's unique ceramic experience and creativity of ceramics will soon be celebrated in Canberra across 4 days in July when the capital hosts the prestigious Australian Ceramics Triennial. That is handy information, Cara.
Triennial.
It would be great if I could leave my apartment.
Another reason to be pissed off about Canberra.
Let alone my country,
Melbourne.
let alone my state. So, unfortunately, no, I will not be going up to the 12-hour hurricane heat. I will not be going up to Queensland at all. Available and willing, but there's always logistical decisions to be made when it comes to these events. So that is the challenge. And when it comes to the 12 hours, they can only be run by a lead Krypteia. So I am in the dark. But if a 12-hour can't be run by anybody but me, and I'm not going to Queensland, draw your own conclusions.
Yeah. I had a talk with Andy Hardy, actually, who messaged me last week to ask if I was an SGX coach. And I said I was not, but I am going to start down that pathway, which I probably would have done years ago to get qualified as a Krypteia. But I much prefer actually doing them. So I've just never sort of gone down.
One infamous coach for that is Roy Hanford, right? So everybody knows Roy, big, tall, Captain America, handsome,
I chatted to Roy about
nice.
6 months ago.
Mate, he's a beautiful
Fit
man.
Project.
Exactly. Now, the thing about Roy is he was notorious. Like, I love Roy, right? Great coach, great Krypteia, would just gets it, delivers every time.
Yeah.
See you, Andrew. But he just wanted to do events. He'd always contact me and he'd be like, Rich, do you need me to Krypteia for this one or can I do it? And I'd be like, oh, buddy, you can do it. It's okay. I'll figure it out. Like, always better with him as a Krypteia, but like, man,
Yeah.
I just
but
had to let him do it.
It's you know what? When I first got into Spartan, I was volunteering at like every event, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Like I'd get on the gladiator line, and I loved it. I'd hand out medals.
Yeah.
But now when I'm at events, I'm fucking working. Like that's, you know, I'm there with clients. I'm taking people on course, and I can't volunteer. You know, so sometimes we got to remember why people are going to these events.
Yeah, I think volunteering is actually one of the most underrated things that people just forget about. And I'm like, it's such a big part of the Spartan journey, and it is a lot of fun to tell people they have to do burpees. Like, you failed, do burpees. like that's.
It is. I basically do it for a job. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and the thing is, you get a frontline like experience, and if you lean into that, it's so powerful. Like just being there for people. There was this dude at MCG. I think it was last year. Man, he was top tier volunteer. Like if I could give someone like volunteer of the year, it was that guy based on just that day. Like he was this small little dude, like muscular. He had beautiful like curly locks, like, and he was just like all about it. He was helping everybody. I'd never seen him before. Like I think that was his first Spartan race. He was volunteering. Dude got like kicked in the nose because he was on the invert wall. So like kicked him in the nose, and he's got like blood all over his volunteer shirt, and he's loving it. Like it didn't stop him, and he was a tank as well. Like he probably would have been competitive, but
yeah,
he was having the time of his life, and that's so important. So anyone who hasn't done volunteering but is watching, volunteer at the events, not just because Spartan runs on volunteering, but because it's actually an incredible experience. Like it's the one thing, like there's two things that are tough when it comes to like working for Spartan. It is the fact that you can't volunteer and the fact that in a lot of cases you can't race. Like being the MC is like rewarding because I get to like launch thousands of people every event to their impending transformation in a Spartan race, and it's fun and it's exciting and it's energetic, but you don't really get to do the race. It's sad, but great. You know, we said, specific adaptations to impose demand. We get one thing, we lose another. That's just how it is.
Sacrifices must be made.
Yes.
I think I saw a couple of questions about spectating at GC with the with COVID laws. Like, are we allowed to have spectators? If you're a volunteer, you get to spectate everyone race. So you get the best seats in the race. I think it speaks.
Exactly, that makes sense.
I think it speaks to the amazing job that Spartan has done as a brand building the community, that we have a sport where people will travel interstate just to volunteer. Like there's a core group of people who travel to all these events that don't even fucking participate in the events. They just volunteer and they do this under their own money. It's like, it's mental. And the best way, I think, you know, you said before, if somebody's looking to get more accountable is join the club, join the class. I think if you want to really make a change and leaning into the community and engaging with that community is a great way to do that. And volunteering is a great way to just get connected with the people that have the traits that potentially you want to develop.
And it was something I actually learned coming out of the Athletics Victoria Level 2 run coaching course, which of all places to learn things.
I was going to enroll in that.
Pardon?
I was going to enroll in that athletics run course. I remember Googling that a while ago.
The first one was quite good because what they focused on community. They basically said, you don't need to know anything about run mechanics. It's like, we're going to teach you a few basic things, but because it's about community running. It's not about being a run coach. It's about being a community run coach. And so they focused heavily on community. Even in the second level, they focused a lot on community yet. And the one thing that they were saying is people are going to get injured. People are going to have impingements. People are going to tear muscles. People are going to have issues with their body. And it's just part of going out there. You know, you go out into the world, you're going to get hurt. That's just how it is. It's called living. So same with Spartan. People get knee issues and they can't run. They get plantar fasciitis. They tear a trap doing their training, right? These things happen. It's part of training. It's even one of the reasons we do training, to find those weaknesses. You have to stay embedded in your community. And this is one of the things that people are always like, oh, I hurt myself and I couldn't go to the gym for a couple of weeks, and now it's really hard to get back into it. It's like, couldn't you go to the gym? Like, if we're talking about like a small studio or something like that, we're talking about like, a business like mine or yours. It's like, okay, could you have still turned up? Could you have helped? Could you have rocked up and just done your foam rolling? Could you have maybe handed out freaking oranges or something like that? It doesn't matter. Get involved, stay connected. And that was one of the things they taught us. It's like, if someone rocks up or someone injures themselves, encourage them to come along to training anyway. Say, turn up, because being a part of this community is so much more than just being able to run. And they talk about like using people as like human running cones. And it's like, they'd get anyone who was injured and couldn't run. It's like, okay, go stand out there. I'm going to have everybody run to you. And it's your job to like high five people as they go past. Yeah. And it was such a great idea. It's the same with Spartan. Not everybody can always afford to race. Not everybody is always in a physical state where they can race, or an emotional state. So still turning up to those events and staying connected in a different way, which is rewarding. That's right, Matt. You can get yourself a shirt. You get heaps of free cool merch, but you can also earn credits towards your future races or other people's races. It's like, it's a bit of a no-brainer if you want to be part of the community. And, now is a hard time because we are such a face-to-face community. We are very driven by getting together and challenging ourselves. And so at some point, you can be as clever as you fucking like, but we are, especially in Victoria, we're locked down, and we're locked down hard. We can't see all the people we want. So sometimes it's just about patience. Sometimes you can't get around things. Sometimes you just have to wait.
Sometimes you got to wait. I got a little bit.
Michael Stewart is the king of shade. Who tears traps during training?
I do, my man.
It's a very good question.
I wasn't even doing anything.
He was doing a shrug workout.
Fucking dumbbell.
He's doing a shrug workout.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Dodging all the responsibility and accountability. Gotta get those shoulders ready.
Yeah.
I don't know. Bam.
That was it. It was like you were almost there. Mike is throwing a little bit of shade tonight. Somebody's revved him up. Somebody's revved up Mr. Stewart.
Yeah.
I can't be too mean to him because I will be doing his hurricane heat. And I got a target on my back.
Good. Mike, no concessions for Matt. If anything, cut everybody because of Matt, but not Matt. I remember I can't even remember which hurricane heat that was, but it was the first one, the Geelong one, the first 12-hour. That is one that will live in infamy because we had no idea what we were doing. And it was basically like, it got some bad feedback, but the people who survived it loved it. And I saw some crazy stuff that night. Like, I remember watching this one chick, just like her arms and her legs were both cramping, and she's on the beach and she's trying to crawl to the next station because she just didn't want to give up. But I remember at one point there was this chick and she's like, "You're not going to break me. You're not going to break me." And she kept mouthing off to me. And the first mistake she made, I pulled up her entire team. I punished them while she stood there and did nothing. And I just saw her face be like,
"That's so rough.
Oh, he can get to me. He can get to me through my team. Oh, I need to toe the line." That's right. And it's just one of those things, there's like the people who think everything's funny.
Don't be smart
because people figure out a way to make you hurt.
They'll fuck you up.
I think they're going to fuck your team, and I'm bringing my 100. Well, that's what I always tell people. I'm like, if you're going to come along to a hurricane heat, either a 4-hour or a 12-hour, then I want your medal, I want your dog tag, I want your patch, whatever it is you get at the end. It needs to mean something. Like I said, there are people out there with spoons that they hang up next to their dog tags because of that event. It's because it taught them something. It meant something. It's not just a spoon. It's not just a medal. It has to be imbued with something, and that meaning comes from what you do at the time. And it's why I'm never fussed with people who cheat at races. I'm like that medal will be meaningless to them. Like they'll look at it and they'll be like, it's just a medal. Whereas other people who gave everything they could during that event, it will mean everything to them. You think about people who have podiumed, right? That first podium that they get, right? I bet that is special to them.
Yeah.
You say none of the podium races are on here.
You talking about people who are cheating at events. You talk about willpower as a muscle that you repeatedly use and you strengthen and it gets stronger. Every time you take a shortcut, you knock a fucking layer off your willpower. You just teach yourself to take shortcuts. It's sad.
Look at that. So we got a couple of things there, right? Karen has still got the zip ties from her 12-hour hurricane heat. Probesy's got the puzzle piece still. Like, this is the thing. Like, that's why I always try and introduce some crazy stuff at the events, stuff they can take home, or just little things, even little things like zip ties and stuff like that. Because I'm like, again, it's transformational. You take something which is just a hunk of plastic or a hunk of metal, and people look at it and it like brings all of those lessons to mind. I have a very long and comprehensive explanation about like cheating and fixed mindsets and growth mindsets. And it all ties into that discussion about like having to be inside every decision.
Sure.
And it's so important because you're either making yourself stronger or you're making yourself weaker with your decisions. And the more you go down that path of taking shortcuts, the more you will be okay, and eventually your brain will convince you that you're doing the right thing. It will figure out a way to justify it. It'll figure out a way to blame the world and make it everybody else's fault for why you're doing it the way you do. You have people who start, right? Yeah, and you will have people, and they will step onto that start line, and they will be like, "This means this. I want to do this. I want to be able to do this."
Yeah.
And then at the end, they're like, "No, I didn't really want to do this," because they cheated, because they cut corners. And so what they have to do is they have to justify it by devaluing the event itself. They have to say, "No, it wasn't something that I really wanted." So I'm like, you have to be so conscious of the things that you want. And when you don't want them anymore, what changed? Was that a decision you made, or was that a decision that you allowed the world to inflict upon you? It's so crucial. It's why you have to have clarity. It's why you have to know yourself so well. And again, the only way you know yourself is by getting out and challenging yourself. Go do a Spartan race.
Somebody asked a question in the Spartans of Australia group not long ago, which was, what do you tell yourself when you're hitting that wall in an event? Like when you're hitting that point in an event and you're really starting to struggle, how do you motivate yourself? And my thing that I say to myself is, why am I here? Like, that's the question. Like, when I start to hit the wall, I'm like, why am I here? Why are you fucking here? Why did you sign up for this shit? And you have to know your why. You have to know your reason. You have to have that clarity. Otherwise, when shit gets tough, you're just going to go, fuck this. I'm going to go back to Netflix.
I think it's more important. Like, I think it's just it's part and parcel, because if you're trying to figure out why you're there at that point, then it's almost too late. It's like, okay, well, now I'm going to try and understand about myself. Like, I think being at that moment, that's kind of number one. That's the point. Like, it's like when you hit that wall, I guess, oh, great, cool. Finally, I can have some personal growth as opposed to just being out here and enjoying myself.
I guess it's like when I hit the suffering, I'm like, remember, you wanted the suffering. Like, you knew
that's
it was
the key.
Coming,
That's the key. And that's the point. It's like, no, you wanted this. If you stop wanting this just because it's hard, that's because you're letting the difficulty, you're letting the challenge change who you wanted to be. All right. And that could have been you 20 minutes ago. And it's why you have to relish that. You're like, cool, this is the only point at which I cement being that person. This is the only point at which I actually get to really express agency in my life. And you want to talk about society, right? Joe Descent is always talking about how soft everybody is and how soft society is. And, you know, some things he's right about, some things he's wrong about in terms of the way you go about it. But the point is, he's not wrong. There are so few opportunities for us in this world to go out and to actually express our agency.
Yeah.
We don't have to if we don't want to. You can stay at home until you're freaking 35 now. Matt, you don't live with your parents, do you?
No.
Okay, good. Just check. I didn't want to offend you.
They kicked me out early.
Like, how early were you talking? 4?
I
don't want to get into any tearjerkers.
17, mate.
Okay, good. Emotions disgust me.
I was an arsehole. I'm still an arsehole. I'm just a slightly more behaved arsehole.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I always enjoy, like, you know, there's a professional Richard. There's a public facade that he puts on. And it's always funny whenever people hang out with me outside of professional events. They're like, "Oh, you're a bit of a dick. Why are you being a dick all of a sudden?" I'm like, no, that's just me. Hi.
Yeah, I don't think I'm a dick, like, but I just don't like getting told what to do. There's a good reason I work for myself. So when my parents tell me what to do, I'm like,
I think there's a common thread there. Thread there. Like, literally, if my partner tells me to do anything, even if it's completely appropriate and makes sense for the moment, I'll just be like, "Don't tell me what to do. You can ask me, and I will do it because I'm lovely. But don't tell me what to do." I'm there's a disorder, oppositional defiance disorder. I don't have it, but I definitely relate to it. It's like you just oppose all authority.
Yeah, I've not heard that term, but I would say Dominica probably would say that I have it as well.
Yeah. But look, and it's so important. Like, I love that question because agency is like, you know, I talk, two of my favorite words are clarity and agency, and you have to look for moments in your life to express that agency. And like, making choices is incredibly hard. It's incredibly challenging. Tracy's laughing because she's probably the person who most experiences me actually just being entirely unpleasant. You know,
being your gym manager.
Exactly. Other than Pat. Yeah. So you know, she's always like, "But I want to know the real you." And I'm like, "You sure? Really sure?" And then she's like, "Why are you so mean to me, Richard?" I don't think she's ever said that to me, but you get the idea. But agency, the point is, life is not challenging enough. It's why things like Spartan are so important, because it allows you to go out into the world and express that agency. And if it's not Spartan, it's got to be something else. It's got to be something where you practice making hard decisions, where you practice simply squeezing that muscle of, this is something that I don't want to do, but is good for me. It can be training. It can be it could be a hobby. It could be literally anything. But the point is that if you haven't practiced it, when the big choices come along, when the actually meaningful ones come along, that is when you will be exposed.
Yeah.
So it's why it's so important, because we see people who don't challenge themselves not be able to live up to challenges. And then all of a sudden we're like, "Oh, that was surprising." Like, you're looking at kids these days and it's like, "Oh, there's this huge issue going on with kids in lockdown. You know, so many of them are struggling more than we thought they would." It's like,
because they've never been tested,
really?
man.
Is it more that you let them be on their devices for, you know, up to 10 hours a day? The average is like 7.5 hours for kids.
It's fucking crazy.
It's like there's no conversations with them around discipline and personal responsibility. Like, you know, I never blame anybody. I actually blame everybody. I'm like, this is a problem that we have created.
It's a society problem. I read a book called.
You just got to look at it. You got to say, it is there. It's a problem, and so now we've got to fix it.
I read a book called Irresistible by a guy called Adam Alter. He wrote it, I think, back in like 2016. But it's like devices, why we're addicted to them, and it shows like how the guys who invented the iPad and all these amazing tech devices don't let their kids use them.
Yeah,
like the iPads were banned in Steve Jobs' house. It's like, it's. I think there's something to be said there about you only ever have your own frame of reference, right? So people can be, and I guess it's easy being a little bit older and going, these fucking millennials, you know, they've got it easy and now they're complaining. But you only ever have your own frame of reference. So their lives were really, really fucking good. Now, not so good. That's what they see, right? Is that gap. And, you know, there's studies. There was a book, the Resilience Project or something. And this guy studies like slum kids in India who have like fucking nothing, but they're like the happiest people on the planet because that's all they've ever had, you know? Whereas you look at the privileged white kids who are some of the most mentally unwell because they've always had everything handed to them. They've never had to earn anything. They haven't had any real hardship. So like, I don't think it's it's definitely not the kids' problem. It's a fucking society problem. And I think it's tragic, but and that's why I love Spartan, you know, for the same reason, because it does give you a chance to test yourself. And by, you know, choosing discomfort, you are then ready for the discomfort that you didn't choose.
That's right. And again, it's simply a facilitator. It provides the opportunities for these things that we need to do. It does it in a nice, convenient, shiny package as well, which comes with lots of medals and shirts, which is always good. You know,
yeah, I think that's just the carrot and stick, right? That gets people in. That's the extrinsic. That's the, hey, come and get a fucking medal. But then the guys who stick around, it turns from extrinsic to intrinsic. At some point, it makes that leap.
Yeah. And it's a big part of what I try and it's what I've always driven. Anything I do at Spartan, I am always telling the people in charge, I'm like, we have to teach fitness professionals how to guide people through that process. It's the most important thing. What do you say to them before the event? What do you say to them during training? What do you say to them at the event? What do you say to them after the event? How do you prepare them so that this is not going to be a one and done thing?
Yeah. I think people need to understand that your journey is never going to stop. Like, fitness shouldn't be I want to get to six pack and then I've achieved what I want to achieve, and I don't have fitness doesn't have to be a value or a priority for me anymore. I think your journey never ends. Like, it just needs to be a part of your life, and you need to always be chasing something. You know, the goalposts may
move, or you'll end up being fucking unhappy.
Right. There's got to be growth. It's got to be growth.
And that's what I try and tell people. Like, it's really hard because, you know, I've studied so much, and this is one of the hardest, especially as trainers, is like respecting, like you said, people only know what they know, right? So everything we know about how we can help that person so much, and we could just literally give them the playbook for the day and their life and their week. It's like, do all this stuff and it'll make you happy.
What they need.
It's something that people, it doesn't work. All right. It doesn't work. And one of the hardest things, I think, is that discussion of day by day. You have to be, you know, I spoke about it before. You have to be involved in your decisions. You have to be thinking, is this making me a better person? Is this making me a happier person? Is this making me a healthier person? If it's not, why am I doing it? Is it simply because I'm indulging? Have I indulged too much already? Like, where are the lines? And it's so important for people to learn that as a skill, because from that comes everything else.
Yeah, and I think people need to have that locus of control. There needs to be some level that they have control of, that they have that agency, because otherwise you get a situation where Melbourne, people's liberties are just snatched away because of COVID, and there's this huge fucking backlash because people don't have control over that.
Yeah, like I said, if you wanted control over the situation, go back in time and become a politician.
Right? You know, put yourself in a situation where you can make change. But I don't think any politician was going to weather this storm very well. But it's having that control. No. Like, you need to feel like you're in control. And as a coach, it's very important to guide them, and, you know, learning where somebody is for what they need at that point. Like, I've got clients, you know, I've got a client, Gary, who did his first 5K sprint with us about a year ago. He's got his first 100K ultra marathon this fucking weekend. Well, like, we've just uncaged this amazing beast. He's just turned into this lunatic ultra runner who's run like 50K of vert this year. Like, he just loves it. But had I sort of, you know, started telling him about ultra running back when we were doing his first 5K, it wasn't what he needed.
Yeah, correct.
And I think as a coach, it's something that you need to get right, and you seem to do a fucking amazing job of it, because you've got the guys who have been with you for a long time and always pushing those boundaries, and, you know, you've got a very strong community down there. I think you and I are usually battling for biggest team.
Yeah. How many have you got? I got 5.
2. They just I'm gonna catch you,
Battling,
man.
is it?
I'm gonna catch you. I came to
Yeah,
the
when
game
I
late.
stopped trying. Tracy, he's coming for us. It's on you now. She's his gym manager. She's the one in charge of this stuff now. So when she beats you, then she can put him on her wall.
That's all right. That's all right. I think Tracy's doing my challenge, so don't be too hard on me, Tracy. I still have to plan that challenge.
That's right. Funny.
It's gonna be burpees.
Tracy loves burpees.
You wanted to talk about the nobody loves burpees. You wanted to talk about the role of training and fitness, and you being the fitness industry consultant for Spartan. There goes my pen. And also one thing that I wrote down was problems in fitness, which we sort of alluded to a couple of things. But what are the big problems that you see in fitness, and why potentially is this sport not growing as fast as we'd like it to?
I think when it comes to, I think my biggest issue with fitness is that fitness professionals never act like professionals. They always act like service providers. Yeah, you watch yourself. You think I'm determined and like committed. Tracy will kick both our asses. I think one of the biggest issues is, like, for example, someone comes to a fitness professional and says, I want to lose weight, I want to look good. And we all turn around and we go like, yeah, okay, I'll give you that because that way you'll give me money. It's like, that's the problem with the industry, is that nobody turns around and says like, well, that's not actually the best thing for you. That's not what's good for you. Like, we're professionals. So if people come to us and they listen to that, and part of it is that there's a lot of professionals out there who only want money, and they know that when their clients get to that goal, that they'll probably just put the weight back on again, or not affect them in a way that is emotional and important. See you, Mick. I think that's one of the bigger issues is, especially as the whole industry makes this lean towards health and well-being, that professionals don't act like professionals. They don't actually sit down and say, well, you've come to me for help. You're telling me that what you want is, you want health and well-being, you want to feel better about yourself, but you're trying to tell me that's connected to how you look, or how other people think you look. And at some point, that is going to have a shelf life, especially if it's about how you look. Because it's like, okay, cool. Well, guess what? Time will catch up to you. Does that mean from the ages of like 60 to 90 that you're going to hate yourself because you've practiced for, 40 years only thinking that the way you look is important, or the way that other people value you or desire you physically matters? Imagine practicing that for 40 years. You're not going to be able to unlearn that. There's no way. It's why you have to practice. It's like, I bring it back in every single moment. We have to teach people to be thinking, why do I want this? And the amount of consults I have done where people just end up crying in the first consult is like enormous. And it's because I'm like, cool, why do you want that?
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you want that?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't give them a shovel. I'm like, keep digging until you give me something real. Like, don't tell me that you want to lose weight. Don't tell me that you want to feel better. Why do you want to feel better? How do you feel better now? What does feeling better mean to you? What is that like? Like, if you're trying to tell me that's based on what other people think, well, I guarantee, even if you're married, 50% chance that that person's not going to be around forever, let alone friends and family. Like, this is just how the world works. If you're like, okay, well, I'm going to base my self-worth on other people, everybody goes at some point. Your parents die, your brothers and sisters move on, you like move through. So that's what life is about. It is about just meeting people and then losing them and meeting new people. And if all you're trying to do is like, okay, well, I was basing my self-worth on that person and now they're gone, so now my self-worth is gone. All right, I'll have to start again with a new person. I'll have to go find somebody else. As professionals, we're supposed to teach people how to get internal, how to work their way towards it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big one, is that our industry doesn't act like professionals. We just act like we are service providers, and that people come to us and they know what's up. We're supposed to facilitate them on a journey to understanding themselves better through health and well-being and through challenge. And I think that if more coaches told people what being healthy was, as opposed to what they, just nodding and agreeing, then it would be more common. You have to normalize this stuff.
Yeah.
I
I
think that's honestly, that's one of the bigger things. If everybody just got on the actual well-being train, then we'd be much better.
I think that's a big thing and a big point. And I think the coaches who do a good job are the ones who know what they stand for, and they tend to have like a certain niche or a certain angle or a certain, this is what I am a fucking about. And I think because there is this like scarcity mindset of so many coaches, because it is a saturated industry, I think it's so much like, if a client comes to you and they say, I want to lose weight, you're like, yeah, fuck, I'll give you whatever you want, because I need that fucking sale.
Right.
You know what I mean? But the customer's not always right. I think, as you've said, you've got to take them on that journey. If I work with somebody, usually like all my higher level guys, the higher performers or people that have been with me a long time, I literally get them to read books. I'm like, all right, so your fucking task is, this is your audio book. This is what you're learning. And usually it's like, what's the lowest hanging fruit that I can see? What's the one part of your life that you not really have an order? Let's point you in that direction and start educating you in that direction. Because when people come to you, they just want the result, but they may not have that have had the mindset shift that you've had as a coach, because you've done the research, you've gone down the rabbit holes.
I reckon I could count on two fingers the amount of times people have come to me and been like, "No, I just want to continue challenging myself. I want to continue being healthy, and I know that that's by exercising." So like, I've been doing this for like 10 years, and I reckon twice people have come to me and said something meaningful like that. One person was like, "I just want a community." They said, "I want to be part of a community." They're like, "My training's already pretty good, but like I want to learn something new."
How many people have you transformed though to that mindset? Like now, after working with you for an extended period of time, this is now what fitness is for them. They are on this, perpetual growth.
I'm not gonna lie, I would just prefer everybody to come to me ready to go. It just seems like it'd be a lot easier,
I don't think so, man. I think the challenge would be gone. I think all of a sudden you'd get bored.
I'm okay with that now. I've had 10 years of challenge. So if people just come to me and they're like, "I'm already fabulous, but I feel like you could maintain that for me," I'd be like, "Sure, thanks."
Yeah.
But no, you're right. And I think it's part of the reason why our industry and other professionals don't do this is because you're right. They think that business is scarce, and it's because we are making it scarce, because we are driving people away. More and more people are like, okay, well, like, and the community is beginning to understand this. The wider world is beginning to understand how important it is to think about so much more than just like, what do I weigh? What do I look like? I can't, because of the wrong motivational mindset. There's a good question, Andrew. I think, again, maybe, actually, no,
I definitely have.
Yeah, I can unequivocally say that I have. It's less that I've turned them away, and it's more that at some point during training them, I have said, in some cases, "Hey, guess what? You're not welcome back." Or I have said, "I don't think I'm the right person for you. Here's somewhere else you can go."
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever been that like someone was just in the wrong place, because I feel like most people, if they're happy to turn up every week, then you can chip away at people. Like, I'm a pretty stubborn guy like that. I think the only times I've turned people away is when things were inappropriate, or they did something they shouldn't have done, and it was like, I remember one person, I was like, "Hey, guess what? You can come back, but you have to apologize." And they were like, "Fuck you." And I was like,
Righto.
okay. Didn't realize apologizing was so freaking hard, but okay.
Yeah. I've certainly had people that have started and gone a couple of weeks in, and they've just been so fucking painful. They'll come to you and say, "I want to change, I want to do this," and then you're like, "Okay, this is how we're going to do it." And they're like, "No, I know better." It's like, well, no, why the fuck are you paying me? Like, if you want to just keep doing what you're doing, just go do that. That's fine. Sometimes there's that disconnect. But I'm also,
funny story. One guy I had, like again, I'm not like a at hurricane heat, sure, but like in when I train people, I'm never like, you can do it, I believe in you, oh, I'm so proud, like keep on going, you've got this. I'm just like 10 push-ups.
Yeah.
Activate your scaps more. You got 2 more. Okay, that was a good set. Maybe a little bit more energy next time. Like that's how I train people. I'm just real mechanical because I'm like, but I remember this one guy and he didn't train with me for very long. And he's doing burpees and he actually turned to me at one point. He's like, tell me I can do it. I'm like, I'm not going to do
that. Not selling out, man.
I'm like, but that was what he needed. Yeah. He needed that extrinsic reinforcement. I'm like, you want a cheerleader? Go get a cheerleader. I'm here to tell you what's going to get you results. It doesn't work for everybody, you know.
Yeah, I think it's important that you work with people who are a fit for you. When I was a face-to-face coach, when I first started, I was sort of just taking anyone I could get, and I ended up with some people who just weren't a fit that took a large amount of my mental energy and drained me. And it wasn't that they were bad people; we just weren't super compatible. So I think it's important that you recognize that. You are not going to be for everyone. I'm a big personality. There's some people who don't like me. I'm sure you're the same, Rich. You're a big personality. I'm sure there's people who disagree with you.
Fuck 'em.
So fuck 'em.
Anyone doesn't like me, they can. I've had so few people tell me to my face that they don't like me. But if they do, then I disagree with them wholeheartedly. Fabulous and beloved by all.
But you
don't put up with that, man. If people don't like you, then fight them. Tooth and nail.
I did a
win their approval.
I did a post about this. I posted a picture in my elevator of me wearing inflatable boobs and a candy G-string when I moved out of my unit, and I had a mullet wig. And I just found all this random shit. So I took a photo and I lost like 60 followers overnight. And I'm just like, fuck them. They weren't for me, they weren't my people.
Or you weren't for them.
Yeah, well, exactly.
That's a great thing about social media. Click.
Curate your own content. I think
at least they didn't message you and complain. At least they were just like, oh, I don't really like that guy. I'll just unfollow him. Better than being like, I'm going to type about things and let you know how angry I am.
Oh, I still get trolls, man. Everyone gets trolls. If you're not getting trolls, you're not doing enough.
Is that like an STD, Matt?
There's cream for it, yeah. There has been times though, like when I'll do like an initial consult and I just won't even get to a sales script. Like I won't even get to the end where I'm like, all right, give me a credit card. Like I'll just have a chat with them and go, here's some advice, go and do this, because they're either not ready or they're not at a point where I think I can help them, or I've built a really good community of people and that is fragile. And if they are something that just is not going to fit with that community, like I'm not going to sacrifice the community of clients that I've got for one person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's certainly been instances of that, but hopefully that answers that, Andrew. But ultimately, we try to help everyone we can, right?
Nah.
Why do you think is Spartan not growing as fast as you would like?
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think that they're making the right choices by trying to standardize it to make it more accessible. I think that definitely was something where it was a little bit haphazard as a brand to start with.
Sure.
I think that globally, though, it's not just Spartan, it's OCR. Like, I remember like 5-6 years ago, there was like 70 obstacle racing events in Australia, like either events or groups or whatever. And the issue was that it was just so disorganized. And the OCR league tried to do something about it and tried to get organized. But it was the same. It was a volunteer organization. So, you kind of get what you pay for in situations like that.
Yeah.
I think in Australia, there has been a little bit of a disconnect from the brand. And it always happens when you have a new licensee come in, if they're not an experienced Spartan, if they don't really understand it, like it takes a while to wrap your head around it. And also, it depends on what your motivations are in terms of that brand as well. And for a long time, Spartan hurricane heats and endurance events have not been promoted at all within Australia because there was a fear that it would discourage people from participating and getting it in at the entry levels. It was that people would see the hurricane heats and go like, oh, like
get intimidated.
I don't want to do that. But the issue was that there was zero marketing whatsoever done. So that meant that for the people who were in the brand, there was no reason for them to stick around. There was no like, okay, I've done a sprint and now I've done a super and what's next and how do I challenge myself? They're just getting a taste for these things, but there's really no information floating around. And I think the other thing is definitely facilitating communication among the right communities. So fitness industry is huge. It's something that I always drive in my role with Spartan. It's like we have to engage with the fitness industry because these are the people who are the gatekeepers. Again, whilst people may not always be told the right things, they're always listening. They're always there and hungry for knowledge, and they want to learn from us. And they respect. In a lot of cases, I would hope that people respect their trainers. And if a trainer said, "Hey, look, I want you to go do this thing. It's called Spartan Race. It's going to let you challenge yourself." And it's going to give us some benchmarks in terms of your actual fitness, not just what you can do in a gym, but what you can do out there in the world. Right? If trainers said that to people, then they'd be like, okay, cool, I'll do it. Yeah, all right, cool. Whatever you say, boss. That's kind of what you're looking for. And I think that it's still not being done well. And I say that from the role of a fitness industry consultant. I'm not in charge of it.
Do you think that's just, not having enough people who are willing to put their hands up and sort of drive it? Or do you think that should be coming from Spartan? Like, do you think Spartan is driving that and contacting the right, key people and driving that change?
I couldn't tell you because it's not, I don't want it to sound like a cop out, but it's not my job. So I say that not from I wash my hands of responsibility. I don't have that information. I don't know what their approach is. Cool. It's not working, whatever it is, because obstacle racing attendance isn't increasing. We're not seeing it become a normal thing. It's also the same thing when it comes to health and well-being. I look at that and I say, okay, cool. We have an entire industry dedicated to health and well-being, and physical and emotional well-being is worse than it's ever been and on trends to get worse. So how effective is our industry?
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward. I'm like, if it doesn't work and it continues to not work, then whatever you're doing isn't the solution. So, I guess, again, being a consultant, it can be frustrating to go like, here's all the amazing things you should do, and this is how it's going to work, and then it not be implemented. But again, if you don't like something, fight to make it change. And so that's just what I do for Spartan all day, every day, is to try and fight to change things.
Yep. Yeah, cool.
Did I answer your question? I think I did.
I did. That's a good answer. I like it. Luke said, love a no dickhead rule to become part of a great community. I do have a no dickhead rule. I actually say it on sales calls.
Are you a fan of Simpsons, Matt?
Yeah.
How fresh are your Simpsons quotes?
Going back a few years. I haven't watched it for years,
cool.
But I used to know it.
There's a moment where they're like, I can't even remember what the kid's name is. Oh, no homers. It's the no homers rule.
Yeah, the no homers.
So they're allowed to have one. They're allowed to have one.
Yeah.
So you're
got that cool guy. Yeah. I'm the dickhead. It's a no dickhead.
You're the one.
Right. I like
that. Thank you. You're welcome.
I like that.
Mick's gone. Mick left. Who else is here to cast shade? I gotta pick up his slack.
Is he sending you his trolling through text? Is he still texting you?
It's like, hang on. Mick says, quote Simpsons. Matt Moore's. Yeah, okay, I got this.
What he said. Matt Probes agree. Mate, let's talk about what you do down at This Is. Obviously, run a stunt and OCR gym. Amazing community you've created. What's This Is all about? How long has it been running?
again, I spoke about that idea of like health should be adventurous and proactive. So that's effectively what we do. We try and deliver training in a way that is, again, you've got to balance all these things out. It's like Spartans are doing, you've got to balance out what is palatable with what is recognizable. People have to be able to recognize it as a gym and be like, cool, they're going to help me out with my health and well-being goals without being too crazy and controversial. So that's always the balance that I struggle to meet. But that's what we do. We try and get people in. We try and get them to go to events is a big one for us because, again, you want to create milestones with people.
100%.
I got it. Like I think it could have been one of the kids. I can't even remember, but I'm not going to lay credit to it because I don't remember making this up. But someone was like, "Count memories, not calories," and I'm like, "That's a really good saying. I like that. That's quite good." So that's really what we do. We try and, again, drive a community, do events, train people to be healthy, again, with the full sense of that word. One of my biggest things is, though, it's all about being proactive. If you are unhealthy, that is not the time to say, all right, well, I'm gonna be healthy. Because what happens is people talk a lot about a spectrum, right? You got at 10, you have you're self-actualizing, you're incredibly healthy, you've got all of your shit sorted out. At negative 10, you're like the worst you can be without being dead. Physically, emotionally, socially. 0 is where most people are happy to sit because not being in trauma tends to be the norm these days. And so what people will do is they'll go to a gym or they'll go to a community and they'll go, all right, cool. I just want to not be in pain anymore, emotionally, physically, or socially. Okay, I'm there. Cool. Guess I'll stay here. That's not what it should be about. It should be about saying, okay, well, now what's next? Okay, let's figure it out. How do we make you more resilient? How do we make you, because life's going to come along. Life's going to come along and it's going to knock you down. And if you're sitting at 0 when you get knocked down, you're going down to -3, -4. And that way you then have to claw yourself back up to it, as opposed to if you were a resilient, healthy, well prepared person for challenges and you're up at like 7 or 8 because you're pushing and you're suffering and you challenge yourself daily, then something big and challenging comes along like a global pandemic, then you get knocked down to like a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 0, but it ain't a -7. And so, like, I think about what my life would be like. Like, I look at, mental health is a big problem for my family, and I look at where I could be if I was not prepared the way that I am, especially at times like this. What what position would I be in emotionally and physically? So I look, and I'm pretty sure I know the answers because I've got 2 brothers, and I can use them as kind of a little bit of a benchmark test for myself. And I'm like, I wouldn't be doing well, and so people need to remember that. Like, you need to. What is it? What did they say? Make something when something. There's a saying for this, and I can't remember what it is anymore. It's only just come to me. It's like make hay while the sun shines or something like that, right? It's like don't go out and try and like prepare yourself during the time when you're being challenged.
It's too fucking late.
It's dumb. And so that's what we mean when we say be proactive. Like people, we want people to be with us for the sake of preparing themselves for challenge. And that in and of itself should be a rewarding process, hence the adventurous.
I hate to think where I'd be if this pandemic hit 5 years ago. When I did not have my shit sorted. I'd be in a bad place.
And you wouldn't get to be chatting with me.
No. I probably wouldn't own a lot of things. I probably wouldn't have this technology.
Good. That's right. Yeah. Owning things is a big part of society. Capitalism. Buy things, especially gym memberships and online training.
Yeah.
And Spartan Race tickets.
Definitely. What about risky kids, man? I've wanted to. Well, one of the reasons I want to chat to you is to find out about risky kids and what you're doing. You're in 15 locations now. I've heard a lot of people mention it. What is risky kids?
Yes. So risky kids is the answer to all of society's problems, but also a reaction to the fact that I didn't feel like Spartan was doing a great job with kids. So my dad, I inherited something from my dad, which is anytime we see a problem, we're like, I can fix that. And so we try and fix it. But honestly, like Risky Kids was derived initially from, I was like, all right, I'm going to have a gym. I want to have a kids program because I want it to be like a family friendly place. So I started sitting down and I started researching stuff. And I'm like, that's interesting. That's even more interesting. Because what I was trying to do is I'm like, how do I take a kid and prepare them to be my ideal client, to be someone who wants to challenge themselves, who's happy to move,
Sure.
who is emotionally resilient. And so, funnily enough, it was actually by like really heavily studying, taking risks as kids. And
Sure.
the mechanics that go behind it is like, I'd love to talk about it in depth, but we've already been talking for 2.5 hours. So,
Yeah.
in a nutshell, like the more we challenge ourselves, especially while we're younger, the more resilient we are for our entire life, the more active we are for our entire life, the more self-confidence we have, the less like. And the funny thing is, these all tie into all sorts of things. People, for example, will use these when they are lacking self-confidence, and the less self-confidence they have, the more they will use them. The more self-confidence they have, the less they will use them. So
The
you
less
can
they
say
build that
chicken and
skill
egg.
set.
Are the devices reducing or eroding our self-esteem? Who cares? The answer is more self-esteem, less device use. So what we need to do is we need to help kids with their self-esteem. How do we do that? We challenge themselves. We give them frames of reference for that self-esteem, who they are. We let them have identities. We affirm them during that process, and we let them know that being an individual is great. And so effectively, we just use pre-existing movement styles. So parkour, ninja, obstacle racing, tricking, a whole bunch of like natural movements where you can't say you're doing it wrong or you're doing it right. It's either better or worse, and trying or not trying. So what we can do is we can help shape the kids for that journey. But I've learned a lot as well during the work that I've been doing. And especially one thing I learned out of the early years learning framework is you can't just try and turn kids into good adults. You have to remember that being a kid, goes all the way up to, in some cases, like 20, in some cases, 32. The point is that like there has to be a childhood. That has to be a good part of their life. It can't just be like well, if we flip all of these switches, then we'll get a great adult. And that's the important thing. Kids have got to have a childhood as well. And so that was one of the things where I'm like, okay, well, maybe it needs to be fun and stuff like that as well. Like maybe it just can't all be, input, output. And so, I kind of harkened back to the things that I enjoyed as a kid. And so we'd do like, a movie at pizza nights and Nerf wars and heaps of cool fun stuff with the kids. But realistically, again, it was from looking at things like kids sport, to get into it in a nutshell, it's actually not great for kids, especially the society that we have created. It doesn't we talked about mastery earlier. Like you take a kid who's never done sport before, and then you throw them into a sport club, and all of a sudden they've got to learn rule mechanics, they've got to learn team mechanics, they've got to keep up with everybody else who's already been doing the sport. Like there's so many barriers to that participation. It's like, okay, we've got to step it way back. Like it can still be challenging, but it needs to be challenging in a different way. And there are some great groups out there that are doing stuff. Like Scouts is actually one of the very few organizations out there which kind of is at all tapped into this like information and science, but they're also like really established. Like their goal is to make Scouts, just like Auskick is to make AFL players, just like Gymboree is to make gymnastics athletes. The point is that like nothing is out there just to help kids be their best.
Sure.
Like there is no program which just says, okay, well, if we do all of these things, then kids will be amazing and great and also have fun while doing it. So I was like, there's a hole in the market. I know how I can fix that. And so now we've got Risky Kids, and it's going really well. Like, I don't like to talk it up too much because you got to try and be humble. But the point is that it just seems like it's something that parents are like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Where's that been? And we just everywhere we go when we're open, we just book out. Like we just constant flow of kids booking in and not going anywhere. Like they're just sticking around perpetually. And part of it as well is we talk to parents a lot because, again, like I said, the state that kids are in is not because of parents. It is not because of kids. It is because of everybody. So I'm like, I can't just say, it's your fault, do better. I'm like, okay, well, I've got to give you information. And then I have to do a good job inside of the gym. Like I've got to create a community. Then I've got to try and go into their schools and talk to their teachers about this stuff. And then we got to go to we do work with YMCA camps here in Victoria because I'm like, that's a great place for them to go and learn all about this stuff. Wouldn't it be great if all of their outdoor educators were trained in all of this stuff as well? So yeah, it's going well, but I think that's because it's something that is missing, and
Yeah,
so
definitely.
we're filling that hole. So yeah, really excited, and seeing, like, I never thought, again, we go back to this conversation of like helping people, plus future leaders. Yes, yeah. So we're expanding. We're looking at not just the younger kids, but the older kids as well, and now younger kids soon as well.
Yeah.
So we're kind of like going to be like from 2 to adulthood is our goal. But this is the funny thing, and great interjection into something from Caitlin
Unpacking.
there. Yeah, it's a word. Because I have found that working with kids is incredibly rewarding, possibly because I'm lazy and kids listen to you, right? Like working with adults, there's so much baggage. Sorry, Caitlin. But like kids listen to you. And
Yeah.
this is the hard part though. Like there's always a trade-off.
I imagine
They're
there's
honest.
challenges.
They're honest as shit. Like if they don't like something, they will tell you. And it's why, you ask a group of adults after a training session, oh, how'd everybody go? What did you like? What didn't you like? Oh, I loved it. Yeah, it was great. And then they'll go and bitch about you in the car park.
Yeah.
Kids are just like, I hated this. I hated this. I hated this. It sucked. And you're like, cool feedback. I worked on that for a week. Thanks. But it's also, it means that you as a person can grow. And it means like there is no, yeah, Kaylin gets what I mean. It means that like, it just means you can be so much better at what you can do because like, again, you're working for the kids. I'm not saying you have to always listen to them. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, well, we did that because it's good for you. So too bad. It's just like at some point you've got to be the adult in the room as well. Not just like, it's like, I didn't like that. It was hard. It's hard because it's good for you. You said you wanted a challenge.
That's the point, Jessica.
So, yeah, it's very rewarding as well because you can see these kids changing, and you know that it's going to be like a lifelong change. Like it's always rewarding to help someone as an adult, but at some point, again, you've kind of just like helped undamage them, which is the term that I use a lot. It's like, okay, usually we just get damaged people. We're trying to help them physically, emotionally, socially. With kids, it's like you're shaping their futures. So I find that personally very rewarding.
I can see
really do.
I can see the jump, from working in, as an OCR coach and really helping people on that mindset level to then going to working with kids. I can see that a logical step. I haven't done much with kids. What have been some of the biggest challenges? What have been some of the biggest learning curves and adaptations you've had to make as a coach?
Good question. Parents is always the biggest one, but the thing is, well, it's the thing is, kids can't make a lot of decisions for themselves, like, and that's more's the shame. But one of the biggest challenges I think is just, sometimes parents just, they either don't get it or, I hate to say it, some parents don't care. And I would never make assumptions as to why they don't care. Sometimes I imagine that there's almost, and this is the hard thing, like I never try and blame people for things. I'm like, okay, what led you to that moment? What led you to that choice? So there's like generational trauma involved with people. And, like sometimes, people bring me their kids and they're like, they're overweight themselves and they have no intention of training. And I try and talk to them about how important it is for their kids to do this so they lead an active life. Like, it's not going to work because that person doesn't value it. But the thing that I always hold on to, that any parent that brings their kid to our program cares about their kid. They care enough to bring them there, and that's always going to be enough. Even if they don't believe what we're saying, I can still work with that. I can still work with their kid. I can work on helping their kid, and I can hope that the parent can maybe see what we're doing with their kid, and maybe that can change their perspective on their own health, their own well-being. That's why I try and get the program into as many gyms as possible, because I'm trying to help change a culture and change a community. So, and whilst I say it's the biggest challenge, again, it's there's always heaps of challenges, but like I said, kids are honest and they will listen to you. So like we work with all sorts of kids. We work with kids who are like on the spectrum for autism. We've got ADHD, and big part of the program I designed was like, okay, well, whatever we end up with, it can't be a program where I've got to have a special needs group, because that kind of defeats the purpose. If I have to isolate kids who have got a different set of needs to your what we'd call a neurotypical a kid with neurotypical behavior, then the program doesn't work as far as I'm concerned. It either works for everybody or it doesn't.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, the challenges are always.
That okay,
comes maybe that's the challenge
in itself. Yeah,
exactly. And the thing is, sometimes when you've got something which is fresh and new and exciting, people have no idea what it is. And so, people bring their kids to the program, and like the things we're talking about are just like, they're like, oh, my kid just wanted to do parkour. I just want him to burn up some energy. And it's like, yeah, are you still trying to get risky kids into schools? Yeah, perpetually, but schools are a big barrier. So, it is a good question. We're trying to get risky kids literally everywhere. I'm going to take over the world if I can.
Sounds like an amazing program, and comes from the right place, which is as a business when people have the right intentions. You combine that with the right systems and the right ethics, it's usually going to succeed. But you see a lot of people create business for reasons. You were talking about some people in fitness before. It's about the money, and that eventually catches up with people. I think. I think it sounds amazing.
That's one thing. We you've always got to tread really carefully. We've got a great team. Like, I've got an awesome team who's been working so hard through lockdown. Like, I've got three coaches who are delivering Zoom classes, sometimes to just like one kid at a time, because I do not envy parents at a time like this, especially in Melbourne. Like, we've just got kids going back to school now. Like, trying to keep kids energized and motivated, tough, let alone then trying to get them onto screens. So
most of the fucking adults I know are struggling to keep themselves motivated.
Yeah. Funnily enough, like, I've been working behind the scenes. I just had Chris Forrest up in Albury. So he runs a gym called, it was called the CJ Rubric. Now it's called Reform Fitness Hub. So they've just started the program. It's kind of just been friends and family though, but complete sellout program. So like, I'm confident. I'm super confident that as soon as we reopen, we're not going to have any problems, just because, again, it's timely and it is desired. So
there's I can see a huge demand in the market for it, but you've got this educational barrier, right? It's that conversation we were having before about when a client comes to you and they're like, I want to lose weight, and it's our job to take them from I want to lose weight to I want to live a healthy lifestyle. Yeah. And as a fucking result of living a healthy lifestyle, you will have the weight that you want. But there has to be that re-education. I think spreading that from an experience and a person to person, like if you're doing the right job, the word will spread. It sounds like it's something that's very shareable, something that people are going to.
The great thing about it is we don't need to do much. So I guess that's kind of the point. Like, number one, kids are driven to take risks. It is actually developmentally coded into us as human beings. Yeah. We want to take risks as young people. Yeah, exactly. It's why we're seeing this huge spike in anxiety in kids. It's because they're not experiencing any fear or thrill or in a lot of cases, any negative emotions when they're growing up. So when they finally do, they're like, well, this is terrifying. Even if you just talk about like the autonomous response, right? It needs to be habituated. It needs to experience these things. And so the answer kind of is get the kids in and challenge them with movement, which kids love. And you get all of these fabulous outcomes. So, whilst there's an education component there, I am also completely happy if a parent's like, I'm just going to bring my kid in and just let them do parkour and ninja and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, that's how the program works. It has all of these great outcomes, but if you don't care about that, then that's all I'm going to do with them, really. I'll talk to them about mindset stuff every now and then as well, but I don't. Just challenge them. Like we all of our coaches go through like this big process. So like the coaches have got to do a lot of work. Again, I really appreciate the coaches because they're going to do a lot of work. Like they're tapped into the kids in terms of like, how do I challenge this kid the right amount? How do I dial this back? How do I work with a kid who doesn't want to challenge himself? How do I work with a kid who's challenging himself too much? How do I like affirm different behaviors? How do I reward all of these different mindsets? So my coaches, I'm so hard on them. The kids, I'm like, just let them be kids. Like, we'll guide them through that process. So my coaches, I have very high standards, but they do a great job of living up to it.
Yeah, awesome. And it sounds like it is, you know, the word of mouth is spreading, and it sounds like a noble cause and people are getting behind it. How you know, what's the next step in growth? You said you're trying to get into schools. What's your barrier there?
With schools, the barrier is always money. And also curriculums, because they're like, oh, can you come in and can you deliver like a day? And I'm like, oh, look, we really don't do that. I'm like, I actually, I think Andrew was asking, do you turn clients away? I'm like, yeah, we don't do silver bullets. I don't believe in them. I don't believe you can walk into a school, deliver a seminar or an activity, and then walk away having changed those kids' life. One of my future leaders, we talked to them about bullying the other week. We were kind of like getting their opinion on it and like, how's it handled? And one of the girls was like, yeah, our school does a thing for bullying. They give us an assembly and they say the same thing every year, and then that's it. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't work. This stuff doesn't work. And so I say, oh, look, honestly, I'd prefer to either train your teachers or set up an after school program or come in at least once a term. And then they always go like, oh, that sounds like a lot of hard work. We're not going to do it. Yeah. So that's the biggest barrier we really have. And I understand it, like it is. And so I always try and top down, bottom up. I'll go to the schools and I'll fight for them there, but then I'll go to the top and I'll go to organizations like ACHPA, which is the PE Teacher Association. I'll talk to them. Sure. And I'm like, hey, I'd like to get our courses accredited. That's glacially slow though. So like I've already been talking to them for over a year. So anything that's top down always moves incredibly slowly. So you got to approach it from both angles. So schools, camps, after school, merch, books, TV shows, you name it, buddy. I'm going to do it all.
Is it something? And excuse me for digging around a second ago. My
go, mate.
Headphones are beeping at me, so they might go flat in a sec. I'll swap. But is it something that you're across 15 locations, New South Wales, VIC at the moment? Is that something that you run as staff or contractors, or are you looking to franchise? Like, have you sort of had those thoughts?
Funny you should ask. So before we were talking about how Spartan went into Canada and they took over and administrated that themselves centrally. So, and I was saying that, it's that idea of, okay, did they do that because that was their only option, or are they seeing an opportunity and sort of seeing a crisis and turning it into an opportunity to try something new? So we're still in that stage where we're developing and we're trying to figure out what the best model is. So we've tried a couple where we've gone in and we've set up affiliate programs where effectively they buy into the training and they buy into the license like CrossFit. We've tried some where we're doing joint ventures where we're going in and we're supporting them. We've got some locations which are completely standalone. We've got some which are in buildings. We've got some which are, we're about to launch one in Frankston, which is going to be basically purely outdoors.
Awesome. Matty Probes has just chimed in. Come to my school. He's a principal, actually, school principal.
Fantastic. Well, that definitely cuts out a lot of the trouble, because usually the hardest part is getting to the principal.
You got to get in one. You got to get a case study, right?
That's it, Matty. Just flick me a message on Facebook, mate, and we'll follow up. The list of locations. If you go to Facebook and you just search for Risky Kids, you'll probably get a list of like Risky Kids Albury, Risky Kids Frankston, Risky Kids Hallam, Risky Kids Caroline Springs. So there's another organisation we're doing. Obviously through my connections with Facebook. Not through Facebook, sorry, through Spartan, I know a lot of really amazing trainers who are already in this frame of mind. So, for example, Fit Station out in Caroline Springs. So, Kel's jumping on board with that and getting the program rolling out there. Albury, I was really excited because they were actually able to run classes. So being in New South Wales. So to answer your question, we're still figuring out exactly how we want to do it. And I think we're pretty close to figuring out what the permanent business model will be. So I'm excited about that. But, everything has to evolve. You've got to spend some time exploring ideas and sometimes exploiting them. And that's just how you do business.
Yep. Definitely. Cool, man. That's super interesting, and I'm glad we finally caught up, because, as I said, I've heard it mentioned a few times. I've heard you mention it. and it seemed like a good initiative, but I just didn't know what it was about. What's your can anyone just find you at the? Do you run any socials for it, or is there a website?
Yeah, riskykids.com, or alternatively, just any of the Facebook stuff, Risky Kids. Send a message to there's a brand one, which is literally Risky Kids, and then there's all the individual locations. But if you want me, just send me a message on Facebook, or find me on riskykids.com or Risky Kids HQ.
It hasn't completely disconnected from social media yet.
No, but literally, like, all of my shortcuts just take me to my business pages. So I'm like, go to the business page, and I use a social media manager, which has an inbox. So I can go there and I can just basically access all the messages.
Sweet. All right, guys, if you want more info, check it out. And if you want to get involved or know somebody that might want to get involved, or a coach that might want to get involved at school, send them Richard's way. Mate, we have been chatting for a fucking long time. I don't know exactly how long.
It has been 2 hours and 46 minutes if we don't count the 10 minutes we spent beforehand.
We're getting close to the record that I've got, which is about 3 hours, which is Jim Bullard. Man can talk.
He definitely can. Yes, he can.
But it's been a good talk. It's been an enlightening talk. It's been interesting hearing you stand for as a coach, the man behind the microphone, the man under the bid at Spartan events, and looking forward to doing a Hurricane Heat with you sometime soon. Mate, is there anything else you want to sort of wrap up on? I know it's getting a bit late.
No, I'm good. I'm hungry and dehydrated.
Hungry, I know that, Dennis.
I ran very far. I need to rehydrate. Yeah.
Fair call, man. Fair call. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Richard, you stick around for a minute after I end the live. But
yes, boss.
Man, thanks for your time, and I'll let everyone know when it's up at the YouTube, which it usually is a couple of days after the talk. I will pull my finger out and get this turned into a podcast as well. There's just a little bit of work involved, just sort of uploading everything, so it will happen. Give me a bit of time, because I've got a bit of demand for that. But cheers.
Thanks to everybody for watching at home. Thanks, Caitlin. Thanks to everybody I know for tuning in, and anybody I don't know, and also the people who I should know.
There's a lot of people to keep track of. I always feel bad. There's always like one event, somebody will come up and they'll go, Matt, it's so-and-so. I'm like, I don't know who you are. What's your Instagram profile? And they tell me, I'm like, okay, I know who you are. There's a lot of Spartans. A lot of love coming in. Matty Probes. Kate Hobbs joined us just at the end there. All right. Awesome.
Well,
guys.
she said she had the last half, which was, speaking generously, that is 1 hour and 20 minutes. So
it's still a good chat.
It's a good length of information. All right. Karen, lovely as always.
No, guys. I am going to be running the Spartan Bootcamp Sunshine Coast this weekend. Official Spartan Bootcamp. I've also got a hike happening on Sunday. I've also got my challenge starting on Monday. So message me for info on any of those, and we'll